Chapter 567. The Burial of Heaven, who had been in a deep sleep and recuperation, suddenly took the initiative to remind Ji Tianqing. This made Ji Tianqing realize that the stellar divine gold in his hand must be an extremely precious treasure. Otherwise, the Burial of Heaven would never have been alarmed, let alone say such words. He was secretly surprised and quickly asked the Burial of Heaven with his mind. Burial of Heaven, what kind of treasure is the stellar divine gold? What are its effects? The Burial of Heaven said in a low and vigorous voice, the stellar divine gold usually only appears in the depths of the starry sky in the Milky Way. Only after a star of the heavenly cycle star falls and turns into a meteor can it form the stellar divine gold. Its effects are marvelous and extraordinary. As long as you use it properly, it will have countless wonderful uses. Of course, with your current strength and means, you won't be able to exploit even 1% of its wonderful effects. You only need to know that this stellar divine gold is a material used to forge supreme divine weapons. Although the Burial of Heaven's explanation was not clear, Ji Tianqing was still shocked and incredulous after hearing it. A material used to forge supreme divine weapons? Burial of Heaven, what was the quality of your weapon when you were at your peak? Was it also a supreme divine weapon? Of course. The Burial of Heaven answered in a solemn tone and said in a deep voice, take this stellar divine gold first. I'll teach you how to use it later. When you're strong enough, you may be able to find more stellar divine gold and help me reforge my divine sword body. Okay. Ji Tianqing agreed without hesitation. He quickly stored the star divine gold into his spatial ring and stored it away. Then he opened the second meteorite iron box. He saw that it was filled with all kinds of letters, files, account books, and more than a dozen luxurious scrolls. He picked up the letters, files, and account books and glanced at them. The expression on his face became subtle, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. On the contrary, Qin Zheng's expression and eyes became extremely ugly, filled with despair and indignation. It was because these letters, files, and account books recorded the secret letters he had exchanged with various forces, transaction bills, plans, and so on. There was even a lot of confidential information that involved several big shots in the imperial court and his master, the third prince. During the 60 years that Qin Zheng had been the city lord of Liantian City, he had tried every means to find a backer, to curry favor with the various major forces, and to rope in many families and experts. Not only did he have to fulfill his duties as the city lord, but he also had to pay tribute and taxes to the imperial court. Whether it was to curry favor with those above or to win over those below, it would cost an endless amount of wealth and resources. Qin Zheng didn't have a strong family background, so he didn't have strength or wealth. If he wanted to get enough wealth and resources, he could only think of all kinds of ways to fight, rob, and harm others and the people. In the process of his looting, it was inevitable that he had to annihilate many small families and sects, as well as countless civilians and merchants. All in all, Qin Zheng's status and power today was built on the accumulation of countless wronged souls and skeletons. His hands were stained with blood, and no one knew how many people he had killed. He was really full of evil. However, Qin Zheng was a scheming person, and he kept all the evidence and records of his crimes. He also left a backup plan and made sufficient preparations, in case he was abandoned and sacrificed by his master and allies, and he was powerless to fight back. He had the weakness of those forces and experts in his hands, so he could sit on the city lord's seat with a clear conscience. But now, all the evidence had fallen into Ji Tianqing's hands. After Ji Tianqing flipped through a dozen letters, files, and account books, he put them back into the meteorite iron box and put them into his space ring. He slowly walked in front of Qin Zheng and said with a smile, Qin Zheng, I'm really surprised by the gift you've given me. Fortunately, I raided the city lord's mansion tonight and caught you off guard, so I was able to capture you successfully. If you were prepared and informed all the forces and experts to come to my aid, I wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. Qin Zheng's forces were certainly not weak. If he was well prepared, he could at least gather 20 to 30 Heaven Origin stage experts to help him. After all, he was the city lord of Liantian City, a tyrant. How could he be easily provoked? However, he had underestimated Ji Tianqing's strength. He thought that the few consecrators in the city lord's mansion could easily get rid of Ji Tianqing. Moreover, he had never dreamt that Ji Tianqing would be so daring to barge into the city lord's mansion alone. No matter how scheming he was and how deep his network of forces was, it was useless when he met with someone as tyrannical as Ji Tianqing. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and allies were useless. Qin Zheng's body was trembling, like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. He stared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes. He roared with a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, you'd better pretend that you didn't see anything. Those things are not something you can touch. If you dare to leak the news, you'll implicate many forces and experts. Those honorable big shots are not people you can afford to offend. When the time comes, you'll get into big trouble. Even if you kill me, you'll be crushed to death by those big shots and experts. Let me give you a piece of advice. Return the meteorite iron box to me. It'll be good for both of us." Qin Zheng wasn't trying to scare him. He knew very well that the letters, files, and account books in the box were related to more than 10 city lords, dozens of wealthy families and sections. Even the 2 princes of the imperial court, as well as several commanders and generals, were implicated. However, he didn't know Ji Tianqing, nor did he know Ji Tianqing's nature. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He shook his head gently and said in a mocking tone, "Qin Zheng, now that things have come to this, how can I let the tiger return to the mountain and give you a chance to take revenge? You're dead meat, but it's not me who's going to kill you. The imperial court will execute you. As for those forces that are implicated, what does that have to do with me? Don't tell me those forces dare to kill their way into the imperial residence and take revenge on me?" Hearing his last sentence, Qin Zheng completely collapsed. He was truly speechless. Those forces and big shots were incomparably honorable to him. He couldn't afford to offend them. But to Ji Tianqing, the crown prince, they were nothing. As the crown prince of the imperial residence, he was one of the most honorable people on the continent. Ji Tianqing, you. The more Qin Zheng thought about it, the more indignant he became. In despair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Ji Tianqing carried him out of the cave, flew into the dark night sky, and flew south as fast as lightning. Next, he was going to the imperial court to hand over Qin Zheng and the meteorite iron box full of evidence to the imperial court. As the crown prince, why would he be afraid of schemes? Chapter 568. Ji Tianqing sped through the night sky as fast as a flash of light. About 2 hours later, he crossed countless mountain ranges and arrived at the foot of heaven-reaching peak. Arriving at the imperial court again, Ji Tianqing climbed up the bluestone staircase with ease and rushed to the imperial court at the peak of the mountain. It was the darkness before dawn. Heaven-reaching peak was shrouded in the dark night, looking quiet and serene. Other than the patrolling imperial court guards, there was basically no one moving around on heaven-reaching peak. Not long after, Ji Tianqing climbed up the bluestone staircase halfway up the mountain. There was a towering mountain gate halfway up the mountain, guarded by many imperial court guards. The imperial court guard captain in golden armor stopped Ji Tianqing and asked him about his identity and purpose. Ji Tianqing took out the imperial prince token and said in a dignified voice, "I have something to report to the imperial court." "Why are you still not moving?" The imperial court guard captain wanted to let him go, but when he saw Ji Tianqing carrying a bloody middle-aged man in his hand, he could not help but take a second look. With one look, the imperial court guard captain was stunned, and a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. He looked for a moment and recognized that the middle-aged man who was seriously injured and unconscious was actually the city lord of heaven-reaching city. The imperial court guard captain frowned and stared sharply at Ji Tianqing. He asked, "Prince Tianqing, may I ask what is going on? How did the city lord of heaven-reaching city get injured and captured by you?" Ji Tianqing glanced at him coldly and scolded. "What does it have to do with you? I want to see the imperial tutor. You just have to go and report this to him." He knew very well that although he was a noble imperial prince, he could not easily meet the imperial emperor. If he could meet the imperial tutor, he could solve this matter smoothly. After being scolded by him, the imperial guard captain did not dare to ask any more questions. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "Prince Tianqing, His Majesty the imperial tutor has been in seclusion on the star-picking platform to comprehend the mysteries of heaven. His Highness the imperial tutor cannot be disturbed. I can only report the news to Commander Yen, who will pass it on to His Highness the Emperor." The Commander Yen he mentioned was one of the commanders of the imperial court's guards. He guarded the palace of heaven and earth and was in charge of reporting information. Ji Tianqing frowned. He had no choice but to nod and say, "Then go and report it quickly." Don't delay. The guard captain cupped his hands and bowed. He quickly turned around and left, running towards the palace of heaven and earth at the peak of the mountain. Ji Tianqing carried the unconscious Qin Zheng and stood at the square halfway up the mountain, patiently waiting. In order to prevent Qin Zheng's injuries from becoming too severe, causing him to bleed too much and die prematurely, he had no choice but to circulate his energy to suppress Qin Zheng's injuries, allowing him to live for a few more hours. On the peak of the mountain, in the imperial court, to the left of the palace of heaven and earth was a magnificent palace. It was the Eastern Palace, the sleeping quarters of the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. It was currently late at night, but he was not in the mood to sleep or cultivate. He was currently on the roof of the Eastern Palace, leaning on the cornice of the golden tiles. His face was as calm as water, faintly flushed. His eyes stared silently at the crescent moon and specks of stars in the night sky. He held a white jade wine jug in his hand. From time to time, he would raise his head and drink a few mouthfuls of strong wine. The wine in the jug was not a spirit fruit wine that could increase one's power. It was truly dry and strong wine that burned the throat and the heart. Long Yunxiao rarely drank wine in the past. Even if he did, it would be spirit fruit wine that was like fine nectar. However, ever since the consort selection, he had been drinking more and more often, and he only drank strong wine. Now, he had been sitting on the roof for most of the night. The wine in the jug was almost finished. Long Yunxiao raised his head again and drank the last mouthful of strong wine in the jug. His handsome face became redder and redder. On the roof not far behind him stood a beautiful woman dressed in green. She was none other than Ensuin. The moonlight spilled on her body, making her figure hazy and indistinct. Apart from being charming and beautiful, there was also a sense of desolation. She quietly looked at Long Yunxiao, who was leaning on the cornice. Her clear eyes contained a trace of worry and pity. However, she could only watch. She was powerless to say anything. At this moment, a golden figure appeared on the square in front of the palace. It was the captain of the imperial guards guarding the mountain gate. He rushed up the mountain peak as fast as the wind and was about to pass through the square and rush to the palace of heaven and earth. Long Yunxiao caught a glimpse of the captain of the imperial guards from the corner of his eye. He immediately frowned. Whoosh! His figure flashed and streaked across the night sky like a stream of light. He flew several hundred meters away and stopped the captain of the imperial guards. It's the middle of the night. Why are you panicking? Long Yunxiao looked at the captain of the imperial guards and asked in a dignified voice. The captain of the imperial guards quickly stopped and bowed. Greetings, your majesty. Reporting to your majesty, there's an imperial prince named Ji Tianqing waiting at the mountain gate. He said that he has something important to report to the imperial tutor. Ji Tianqing? Long Yunxiao frowned again. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. What's he doing here? The captain of the imperial guards replied truthfully. I've asked him why he's here, but he refused to tell me. He's holding the Liantian City Lord captive. The Liantian City Lord is covered in injuries and is unconscious. It's a tragic sight. I saw that he didn't come with good intentions, so I temporarily left him at the mountain gate. I'm about to go to the palace of heaven and earth to report to Commander Yen. Upon hearing the captain of the imperial guards, Long Yunxiao's brows tightly knitted together. His eyes kept changing as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. The Liantian City Lord, Qin Zheng, seems to be the third prince's lackey. How could Ji Tianqing capture Qin Zheng and even injure him? Could it be that he had a conflict with Qin Zheng? That's not right. Ji Tianqing brought Qin Zheng to the imperial tutor in the middle of the night. There must be something important. Commander Yen, who is guarding the palace of heaven and earth, is also the third prince's confidant. If Commander Yen knows about this, he'll most likely report it to the third prince first. If the third prince interferes in this matter, I'm afraid he'll have to protect the Liantian City Lord. Ji Tianqing will definitely be in trouble. Long Yunxiao's drunkenness had completely disappeared. His mind was very clear. In the blink of an eye, he had analyzed and deduced a lot of information. His expression didn't change as he said in a dignified tone, "There's no need to report this matter to the palace of heaven and earth. Bring Ji Tianqing to the East Palace. I'll deal with it myself." The captain of the imperial guards had no doubts about Long Yunxiao's words. It was impossible for him to disobey. "Yes, your majesty." He bowed and immediately turned to go down the mountain. 15 minutes later, the captain of the imperial guards returned to the middle of the mountain. With a solemn expression, he said to Ji Tianqing, "Prince Tianqing, please follow me." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and followed him through the mountain gate. They walked up the bluestone stairs to the peak of the mountain. Not long after, the two of them reached the peak of the mountain. The captain of the Imperial Guards led Ji Tianqing through the square in front of the palace and into the East Palace. They arrived at the door of a study room. "Prince Tianqing, the person you want to meet is in the study room. I'll take my leave now." The captain of the Imperial Guards cupped his hands and left. Ji Tianqing was puzzled. He pushed open the door and entered the study room with vigilance and caution. In the exquisite and elegant study room, there were a few gemstone lamps lit up. A handsome young man in a golden robe sat there. Chapter 569. Ji Tianqing didn't expect that the person in the study room wasn't Commander Yan, nor was it the imperial tutor or the emperor. It was the son of heaven, Long Yunshao. Long Yunshao sat in front of a large desk by the window. His face was calm and his eyes were clear and deep. Apparently, he had already used his martial art to get rid of the alcohol. He sized up Ji Tianqing and then looked at Qin Zheng. Seeing Qin Zheng's burnt body and bloody holes, he couldn't help but frown. He was a little shocked. Long Yunshao raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Seems like Qin Zheng has offended you quite a lot. He was actually beaten up so badly by you. Even if he is not dead, I'm afraid he is half dead." Then he stared at Ji Tianqing and observed Ji Tianqing's expression. He wasn't sure if Ji Tianqing could defeat Qin Zheng, who was in the 4th level of Sky Origin stage, so he asked to test him. Ji Tianqing didn't hold back. He threw the unconscious Qin Zheng on the ground and walked to the desk and sat down in front of Long Yunshao. "Tonight, Qin Zheng sent 5 consecrators from the governor's mansion to assassinate me. He wanted to take my life. It's not too much for me to treat him like this, right?" Ji Tianqing stared at Long Yunshao. His tone was also playful and probing. Long Yunshao's eyes flashed with surprise. He nodded slightly and said, "If that's the case, then he deserves it. I just can't believe that you could survive the assassination of 5 consecrators and even severely injure Qin Zheng and bring him to the imperial court. If I'm not wrong, Liantian City must be very lively tonight, right?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianqing guessed that Qin Zheng had nothing to do with him. So he nodded and said calmly, "That's right. I killed my way into the governor's mansion and captured Qin Zheng. This will definitely shake Liantian City. But this is just the beginning. I brought Qin Zheng to the imperial court to give the imperial court a surprise." Long Yunshao was shocked again and asked in disbelief, You killed your way into the governor's mansion? You captured Qin Zheng from the city lord's mansion?" He could see that Ji Tianqing had reached the 2nd level of Sky Origin stage. When Ji Tianqing had just reached the Sky Origin stage, he had already defeated him on the Monarch stage. Now that Ji Tianqing had advanced another level, his battle prowess would definitely be even more terrifying. But even so, Ji Tianqing had openly killed his way into the city lord's mansion and captured Qin Zheng under the protection of many experts. That was something inconceivable. Ji Tianqing smiled and said indifferently, "Don't be too surprised. I just caught him off guard. Even you didn't believe that I would dare to kill my way into the city lord's mansion. So how could Qin Zheng have thought of it?" You're getting stronger and stronger." Long Yunshao glanced at him with a strange look in his eyes. His tone was somewhat complicated. "However, since you've done such a great deed, you'll definitely create a huge storm. I really don't know how you'll deal with this." Ji Tianqing was as calm as ever. He smiled faintly and said, "How do we end this? That's your imperial court's problem." Long Yunzhao's eyes were filled with anger. He glared at him and said, "You're really good at causing trouble. You've created such a huge mess, yet you're leaving it to the imperial court to deal with. Tell me, what's the surprise you're talking about?" Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said slowly, "The surprise is, I've helped the imperial court to find a group of parasites and evil forces that prey on the common people and harm the innocent. Qin Zheng has been the city lord of Liantian City for decades. He's formed his own clique for personal gain. He's taken advantage of others and destroyed countless sects and clans. Who knows how many innocent people he's killed? His hands are filled with blood. He's full of evil. He's unscrupulous. Of course, the most important thing is that Qin Zheng has secretly colluded with a few big shots of the imperial court. They've done a lot of dirty deeds." When he mentioned big shots, there was a hint of mockery in his tone. Long Yunzhao's expression changed slightly. Light flashed in his eyes. He had heard about all the evil deeds that Qin Zheng had done. However, he did not ask about it because he did not have the corresponding evidence. Secondly, Qin Zheng did not offend him. He did not have time to care about a small city lord. The third reason was the most important one. Qin Zheng was the third prince's subordinate. If he dealt with Qin Zheng without permission, it would mean that he was declaring war on the third prince. There were a few princes and lords in the imperial court. They were all people of high status and had a strong foundation. Even though Long Yunshao was the emperor, he was only the crown prince. He had not ascended to the position of emperor. In this way, the other princes still had a chance to compete. Naturally, they would not give up on the competition and secretly accumulate forces. The princes and Long Yunshao did not get along well. There were many conflicts and competitions in the dark, especially the third prince. He had a strong foundation and could faintly compete with Long Yunshao. This made Long Yunshao very vigilant and cautious. Now, after hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Long Yunshao vaguely understood something. His heart was naturally filled with excitement and anticipation. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and asked in a deep voice, "Do you have evidence for what you said just now?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "Of course I have evidence. Otherwise, why would I rush to the imperial court in the middle of the night?" "Good," Long Yunshao shouted excitedly. With a solemn expression, he said, "Ji Tianqing, I will bring you to see the imperial tutor now." With that, he stood up and was about to bring Ji Tianqing out of the study to find the imperial tutor. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Why are you helping me so actively?" Long Yunshao was startled. He said calmly, "No, you should be the one helping me this time." "Oh." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He immediately understood what he meant. It seems that the sacred and dignified imperial court is also unavoidably vulgar. There are also power struggles in the imperial family? The mysterious backer behind Qin Zheng seems to be a threat to you? Long Yunshao didn't hide it. He nodded and said in a deep voice, "You and I are both smart people. I won't hide it from you. Your guess is right. Powerful martial strength, power, and wealth are the lifelong pursuits of countless people. Therefore, where there are people, there will be disputes. Even the imperial court is no exception." Ji Tianqing nodded his head, expressing his agreement with his words. The two of them didn't say anything else. They left the study together and went to see the imperial tutor together. With Long Yunshao leading the way, even if Ji Tianqing was carrying a bloodied Qin Zheng, he would still be able to pass through unimpeded. 15 minutes later, Long Yunshao brought Ji Tianqing into the depths of the imperial court. In a cold and simple palace, they saw the sage-like imperial tutor. The imperial tutor was wearing a white robe. He was sitting cross-legged in the main hall, quietly meditating. There was no true essence flickering around his body. However, there was a mysterious and invisible energy lingering around him. It gave people an extremely sacred and powerful feeling of oppression. This invisible energy seemed to be able to see through people's hearts and see through all pretense and falsehood. Chapter 570. Long Yunshao brought Ji Tianqing into the hall and bowed to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor ended his meditation and opened his eyes. He looked at the two of them calmly. When the imperial tutor saw Ji Tianqing, he couldn't help but frown. When he saw the bloody man in Ji Tianqing's hand, his white eyebrows furrowed even more. "Emperor, what are you doing?" Long Yunshao cupped his hands and reported, "Your Majesty Imperial Tutor, there was a drastic change in Liantian City last night. The Liantian City Lord, Qin Zheng, sent 5 consecrators to assassinate Ji Tianqing, but they were all killed by Ji Tianqing. After that, Ji Tianqing killed his way into the city lord's mansion." Long Yunshao told the imperial tutor about the cause of the incident. After the imperial tutor heard it, a look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. He looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. He found it hard to believe that Ji Tianqing had made such great progress in less than a month after entering the imperial tutor's mansion. It was simply shocking. This kid is indeed worthy of being the successor of the Kenshin. His strength has improved so quickly. But this kid is too daring. He actually caused such a disturbance. The imperial tutor thought to himself. His mood was a little complicated. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression and asked in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, you're the imperial prince of our clan. It's a big crime for Qin Zheng to try to assassinate you. However, You need to show the corresponding evidence. Only then can the imperial court uphold justice for you. Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a calm tone, Your Majesty Imperial Tutor, of course I have evidence. Otherwise, how would I dare to come to the imperial court? As for upholding justice, there's no need for that. I'm just here to state the facts. It's up to the imperial court to decide how to deal with this matter. After saying that, he took out an image recording crystal. He first explained the reason for his enmity with the Liantian city lord. Then, he activated the image recording crystal to record the scene. The imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao had both seen Yu Biao's confession with their own eyes. After listening to Yu Biao's confession, they could confirm that Qin Zheng had sent people to assassinate the crown prince. Next, Ji Tianqing took out the meteorite box filled with evidence and handed it to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor flicked his finger and released a dazzling 5-colored light, opening the meteorite iron box. There was no need for him to flip through those letters, files, and account books. He only needed to scan them with his powerful soul to imprint their contents into his mind without missing a single word. After the imperial tutor learned about the forces, people, and events involved in the evidence, he immediately frowned deeply, and his eyes became sharp and dignified. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and said in a low voice, Ji Tianqing, this matter is of great importance. I have to report it to the emperor before I can make a decision. Qin Zheng and these evidence will be left with me. You can go back and wait for the news. Don't worry, the imperial court will handle this matter impartially. They won't forgive Qin Zheng and won't hold you accountable. Ji Tianqing did not answer immediately. He turned his head and looked at Long Yunxiao beside him. Obviously, compared to the imperial tutor, he would rather believe Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao gave him a meaningful glance and nodded his head imperceptibly. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what he meant. He knew that the imperial tutor would not be partial to anyone. The imperial court would definitely handle this matter carefully. Moreover, Long Yunxiao would not let go of this opportunity to weaken his opponent's power. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing bowed to the imperial tutor and said, In that case, I'll take my leave. Also, since I've come to the imperial court today, I'll use this opportunity to register with the imperial tutor and participate in the fight for the Tianjin region lord's position. The imperial tutor nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, Don't worry, I'll report this matter to the emperor. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and turned to leave the hall. At this moment, dawn had finally arrived and the sky was showing a hint of white. Ji Tianqing left the imperial court and spread his wings to fly into the sky. He rushed back to Liantian City as fast as lightning. In the hall, the imperial tutor stared at Long Yunxiao and said meaningfully, The emperor's methods are really admirable. In such a short time, the emperor was able to reconcile with Ji Tianqing and work together to accomplish such a feat. The imperial tutor knew the power of the evidence. It would definitely weaken the power of the two princes. This was great news for Long Yunxiao. He thought that Long Yunxiao and Ji Tianqing had reconciled, which was why they worked together to do such a big thing. However, Long Yunxiao shook his head and said with a solemn expression, Imperial tutor, you've misunderstood. I've only just found out about this. For the past half a month, I've been in the imperial court. How could I order Ji Tianqing to do such a thing? Moreover, with Ji Tianqing's strength and character, how could I order him to do such a thing? The imperial tutor's expression changed slightly, and he was even more shocked. So this matter was done by Ji Tianqing alone? He first entered the imperial residence, and then caused trouble in Liantian City. Next month, he's going to participate in the fight for the Tianjin region lord's position. Every matter would cause a huge commotion. It seems that not only is his strength improving rapidly, his ambition is also expanding rapidly. Long Yunxiao nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, The ambition of a mediocre person is called fantasy. The ambition of a genius is called goal. After Ji Tianqing left the Tianjin region and stepped into the central region, he's like a real dragon entering the sea. He's going to stir up huge waves. I'm looking forward to the fight for the Tianjin region lord's position next month. I'm looking forward to seeing if he can defeat all the heroes and win the region lord's position. The imperial tutor pondered for a moment with a solemn expression and said, Emperor, please go back. I'm going to meet the emperor to report this matter. Ji Tianqing is such a troublemaker. He's created such a huge disturbance and gave the emperor a difficult problem. Long Yunxiao didn't think so. He frowned and asked, What kind of difficult problem is this? There's an ancient saying that if a prince commits a crime, he's punished the same as a commoner. No matter who is involved in the crime, the emperor just needs to deal with it impartially. Even if it involves me, there's no exception. Long Yunxiao's tone was very solemn and serious. He was especially confident and righteous. The imperial tutor glanced at him and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he couldn't refute him. He could only mutter in his heart, "Emperor, Emperor, of course you hope that the emperor will deal with it impartially. After all, the evidence involves the two princes and has nothing to do with you. You can't wait for the emperor to punish the two princes severely." After a moment, the imperial tutor sent Long Yunxiao away. Then he took the unconscious Qin Zheng and the meteorite iron box to meet the emperor. Early in the morning, the sky had just brightened and the morning light was still a little dim. The emperor had just finished his meditation and was resting in the imperial study with his eyes closed. The imperial tutor suddenly walked in with a solemn expression. He was carrying a bloody man in his left hand and a meteorite iron box in his right hand. The emperor opened his eyes and saw the imperial tutor's posture. His heart skipped a beat and he frowned unhappily. "Imperial tutor, what are you doing so early in the morning?" Chapter 571. The imperial tutor's words made the emperor frown and reveal a solemn expression. Ji Tianqing? What kind of trouble did he cause? The emperor thought to himself. Didn't he already send someone to keep an eye on Ji Tianqing? How did he get into trouble? The imperial tutor threw the unconscious Qin Zheng on the ground and explained to the emperor, "Emperor, this is what happened. Qin Zheng has a good-for-nothing son called Qin Feng. He tried to flirt with Suwen, who failed to be selected, but was caught by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing destroyed Qin Feng's lineage, which naturally provoked Qin Zheng's revenge. He was then assassinated by 5 of Sky City's consecrators." The imperial preceptor recounted the cause and process of the matter from beginning to end. 15 minutes later, the imperial tutor finished explaining. He took out the meteorite box and placed the box full of letters and files in front of the emperor. The celestial emperor only needed to use his divine soul to scan through the letter and the contents of the file very quickly. The various evidence and records involved many forces and powerhouses, as well as some people in the imperial court. The emperor immediately frowned and pondered with a solemn expression. The imperial tutor was not in a hurry and waited patiently. After about 10 breaths of time, the emperor sighed in a low voice. "Ji Tianqing, this brat, is really a newborn calf that is not afraid of the tiger. The dignified city lord of Sky City was actually defeated by him in such a simple and violent manner. Speaking of which, not only is he not at fault, but he also contributed to the imperial court. I wonder if this was his own idea or Yun Shao secretly instructed him to do it." The imperial tutor shook his head and said in a calm tone, "This old man has already asked the emperor. He also just found out about this matter." A trace of regret flashed in the emperor's eyes. He sighed softly and said, "Ji Tianqing and Yun Shao are both intelligent and courageous. They are both extremely talented seedlings. If Yun Shao can get Ji Tianqing's assistance, this emperor can be at ease. It's a pity." The imperial tutor smiled and stroked his white beard. "We can't rush this matter. Let nature take its course. After what happened last night, this old man discovered that there seems to be some kind of tacit understanding between the Son of Heaven and Ji Tianqing. This old man believes that the situation that the imperial emperor is looking forward to will appear soon." The emperor nodded slightly and said, "I hope so." The imperial tutor glanced at the unconscious Qin Zheng and asked the monarch, "Monarch, the news of last night's incident must have spread out. Right now, Liantian City must be in an uproar. You have to make a decision on this matter and give me an answer. Otherwise, there will be more rumors and slanders, which will cause chaos in Liantian City." The imperial emperor nodded and said in a solemn tone, "Pass down my decree. Inform the people of Liantian City that the city lord Qin Zheng has taken bribes and perverted the law. He formed a clique for personal gain and even tried to murder the imperial prince of our clan. The imperial court has already investigated Qin Zheng's crimes. The evidence is conclusive, and he will be beheaded in public." As the imperial emperor announced the result in a deep voice, the imperial tutor had already engraved the imperial emperor's decree on a piece of golden spiritual jade with his spiritual energy. Other than the city lord Qin Zheng, there were also a few heinous gangs and clans that were ordered to be annihilated by the imperial emperor. The result was just like what the imperial tutor had said. The imperial emperor treated this matter seriously and was fair and strict. He would never tolerate and nurture evil. A moment later, when the imperial emperor finished speaking, the imperial tutor had also drafted the decree. The imperial tutor was silent for a moment and asked again, "Imperial emperor, all the clans involved in this matter in Lientian City must be punished. What about the few people in the imperial court? Do you want to announce the news? How are you going to deal with them?" The imperial emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, "The 3 commanders and generals involved in this matter must be removed from their positions and investigated. They must be severely punished. The imperial court is the sacred place of our clan. It's definitely not a place to hide evil. How can this imperial emperor tolerate these vermin? As for the 2 princes, the 3rd prince has been leading the army for many years. This time, he will be punished to face the wall and reflect on his mistakes for a few months. The 4th prince has been handling internal affairs in the imperial court. He will be punished to guard the borders and train in the Donglan battlefield for half a year." The imperial tutor nodded slightly and agreed. "This is good too. I believe the 2 princes will understand the imperial emperor's intention with a small punishment, but a big warning. After the 3 commanders and generals have been removed from their positions, how should we deal with the empty positions?" The imperial emperor said calmly, "Take this opportunity to hand them over to Yun Shao. He has been eyeing those positions for a long time. He can arrange his trusted subordinates, but imperial tutor, you have to check carefully and make sure there are no problems before you agree." "Yes, imperial tutor." The imperial tutor cupped his hands and bowed. Then, he left the study room with the imperial emperor's decree in his hands. When Ji Tianqing returned to Lientian City, the sun had just risen. A new day had arrived, and the city was bustling with noise and excitement. However, the atmosphere in the city was a little strange and stifling. Many cultivators and commoners had heard about the upheaval in the city lord's mansion last night and were discussing with worry. All the big and small forces in the city had also received the news that the city lord's mansion was almost destroyed and that the city lord, Qin Zheng, had gone missing. Many forces had a premonition that Lientian City was going to be in turmoil and upheaval. They were all worried about this as they didn't know how the situation would develop. They could only wait and see. When Ji Tianqing returned to Yunlan courtyard, he saw that the guards in the courtyard had a solemn expression and looked like they were in a hurry. The guard captain who was guarding the courtyard's gate had a solemn expression, and there was a hint of worry between his brows. After seeing him, the guard captain was startled for a moment. Then, he immediately revealed an expression of relief. "Young Master Ji, you're finally back." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked in a dignified voice, "What's wrong? What happened?" The guard captain quickly came forward and bowed respectfully. He said with a smile, "Young Master Ji, Eldest Miss has received the news about what happened last night. Eldest Miss sent the guards in the mansion to look for you everywhere. Now that you've come back safely, you should go and see Eldest Miss first so that she won't worry about you." Ji Tianqing couldn't help but feel warm in his heart when he heard that Yun Yao was worried about him. He nodded and said, "Okay, I know." After crossing the gate and entering the courtyard, he rushed to the small courtyard where Yun Yao lived. After a while, he entered Yun Yao's residence and saw Yun Yao sitting in the living room. She was silently waiting for the news with a worried expression on her face. "Yao Yao, I'm back." He stepped into the living room and greeted Yun Yao with a smile. Yun Yao immediately raised her head and looked at him. Seeing that he had returned safe and sound, she immediately felt relieved. Only then did the big stone in her heart fall down. "Tianqing, it's good that you're okay." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He walked to her side and sat down. Yun Yao looked at him with a solemn expression and asked, "Tianqing, did you kill your way into the city lord's mansion alone last night and capture city lord Qin Zheng?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded and admitted it. Then he asked, "Yao Yao, how do you know so clearly?" Yun Yao said in a serious tone, "I'm not the only one who knows this news. I'm afraid that the entire city knows about it. You went on a killing spree in the city lord's mansion, and many people witnessed it with their own eyes. The news has already spread." Chapter 572. Ji Tianqing only found out after asking Yun Yao that what happened last night had already spread. Many forces and cultivators in Lientian City basically knew that the city lord's mansion was destroyed and the city lord was captured. When he went on a killing spree in the city lord's mansion, there were hundreds of people who witnessed the entire process with their own eyes. Those people were the guards and servants of the city lord's mansion, as well as the disciples and family members of the Qin family. When he captured Qin Zheng and left the city lord's mansion, those hundreds of people fled the city lord's mansion in a panic and spread the news. Now, most people knew that the culprit behind the destruction of the city lord's mansion and the capture of city lord Qin Zheng was Ji Tianqing. Yun Yao was a little worried, but she remained calm. She said to Ji Tianqing in a calm tone, "Tianqing, since you're back, stay in the Yunlan courtyard and don't leave. Even if Qin Zheng's allies and backers want to take revenge on you, they might not dare to barge into the Yunlan courtyard. Qin Zheng was the one who committed the crime first. It's not your fault. Even if you kill him, he deserves it. I'll go to the imperial court to meet the emperor later and report this matter clearly. I believe the emperor won't punish you." In the past 4 hours, Yun Yao had already thought of a countermeasure and made the corresponding preparations. No matter what, she wouldn't let anything happen to Ji Tianqing. Even if she had to use the Yun family's power, she would protect him. However, Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head after hearing her words. "Yao Yao, you don't have to go to the imperial court. I just came back from there. As for Qin Zheng, I didn't kill him. I've already handed him over to the imperial court. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Let's just wait and watch the show." Yun Yao was stunned. Her eyes revealed a look of surprise. "What? You've already been to the imperial court?" Tianqing Qin Zheng is the city lord of Liantian City. It's said that he has a prince as his backer. Even if the imperial court wants to punish him, they must have sufficient evidence. Without waiting for her to finish, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Don't worry. If I don't have enough evidence, why would I go to the imperial court rashly? Moreover, I've already handed Qin Zheng and a large amount of evidence to the imperial tutor. I believe the imperial court will handle it impartially. We just need to wait for the results." Only then did Yun Yao feel completely at ease. Her mood and expression relaxed. "That's good." She paused for a moment. Seeing Ji Tianqing's travel-worn and weary appearance, she said in a soft voice, "Tianqing, you had a great battle last night and then ran back and forth. You must be very tired. Go back and rest. I'll take care of the rest. If there's any news, I'll look for you." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. After bidding farewell to Yun Yao, he turned around and left. At the same time, Yun Yao was also busy. She ordered the guards who were searching for Ji Tianqing to stop their search and inquire about the news in the city. About half an hour later, a guard captain rushed back to the misty cloud courtyard and reported the situation to her face-to-face. Reporting to young Mississippi Liantian City is in turmoil today. There are undercurrents surging. All the forces are getting restless. They seem to be plotting something. Some of them are even secretly looking for young Master Ji. However, the imperial court is very fast. They've already sent hundreds of imperial guards to protect the city lord's mansion. The imperial guards forbid anyone from getting close to the city lord's mansion. I can't spy on the situation inside for the time being. The hundreds of survivors in the city lord's mansion have been isolated and are waiting for the imperial court's decision. Yun Yao nodded slightly after listening. The city lord's mansion has been destroyed. Qin Zheng's whereabouts are unknown. All the major forces want to take advantage of the situation. Of course, they'll wait for an opportunity to act. But this time, their plan was going to fail. Liantian City is right under the imperial court's feet. How can the imperial court not act quickly? With the imperial court taking care of this matter, how can they take advantage of the situation? The guard captain continued to report. The commoners in the city are also talking about it. There are all kinds of rumors circulating in the streets. Most people know that it was young Master Ji who did it. The commoners have different opinions about it. Some people are happy about what happened to the city lord's mansion. Some people are happy about it. They think that young Master Ji is in big trouble and will be punished by the imperial court. Yun Yao sneered. She said coldly, "Those ignorant commoners only know about the city lord's mansion's power. They don't know about the imperial prince's mansion's nobility. So what if Tianqing really killed Qin Zheng? How can a puny city lord be compared to the imperial prince? When the imperial court's decision is announced, I want to see what those people who are happy about it will think." After the guard captain reported the news, he bowed and left. Yun Yao sat in the hall and continued to wait. About 4 hours later, it was noon. Yun Luo rushed back to Yunlan's residence and personally reported the situation to Yun Yao. Young Miss, the imperial court's guards rushed to the city and posted the imperial edict. They announced the imperial emperor's order. City Lord Qin Zheng formed a gang and killed innocent people. He even tried to assassinate Imperial Prince Tianqing. He was sentenced to death by the imperial emperor and has been beheaded in public. The few gangs and families that colluded with Qin Zheng have been exterminated by the imperial court's guards. In addition, a few big families and sects that were implicated have also been punished by the imperial court. Their vitality has been greatly damaged. After hearing this, Yun Yao's eyes flashed with a smile. She whispered, "I didn't expect the imperial court to act so quickly. They announced the punishment so quickly. It seems that the evidence that Tianqing personally handed to the imperial court is irrefutable. Qin Zheng has been executed by the imperial court. With so many forces involved, Liantian City will be in turmoil for a long time." After Yun Luo finished talking about the imperial court's order, he said with a strange expression, "Young Miss, most people in the city think that young Master Ji will be punished severely by the imperial court. Those people are gloating and waiting to see young Master Ji make a fool of himself. There are even a few imperial princes who secretly spread rumors that young Master Ji will become the most embarrassing imperial prince and become the laughing stock of the imperial residence." However, everyone was so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell to the ground when they saw the imperial court's order. Everyone in Liantian City was dumbfounded. They couldn't believe this result. Some people recklessly guessed and analyzed that young Master Ji must have a powerful force behind him for him to be safe and sound. There are even some people with ulterior motives who spread the news that young Master Ji is living in Yunlan's residence. He is young Mrs. Lover and the future son-in-law of the Yun family. Yun Luo's expression and tone were a little angry. He was obviously angry at those rumors and didn't want to see Yun Yao's reputation damaged. However, Yun Yao looked indifferent. She wasn't angry at all. She thought to herself, those people are right. Tianqing is indeed the future son-in-law of the Yun family. Chapter 573. Unknowingly, a day had passed. The people of Liantian City were still immersed in shock and were still discussing the execution of the city lord Qin Zheng. The decree issued by the imperial court not only destroyed more than a dozen factions and families, but also made the people of the city remember the name Ji Tianqing. At the same time, the ordinary people who didn't know much about the imperial prince finally understood how powerful and noble the imperial prince was. Although Liantian City was in turmoil and all kinds of rumors were flying everywhere. But under the suppression of the imperial court, there was no chaos in the city. Those big forces who were eager to take advantage of the situation also quieted down and obediently tucked their tails between their legs. Late at night, on a mountain outside Liantian City, at the top of the mountain where spiritual energy was abundant, there was a luxurious and magnificent manor that occupied a large area. Inside the manor, in a heavily guarded secret room, two people were whispering to each other. One of them was tall and strong, wearing a golden robe and a purple cloak, exuding a powerful and noble aura. He wore a crystal mask, only revealing a pair of sword-like eyebrows and red phoenix eyes. His back was facing the door of the secret room, staring at a star map on the wall. Not far behind him stood a young man in a green robe with an extraordinary temperament. This man had a resolute and handsome face, and he was Duanmu Yulong. He stared at the back of the golden-robed man and said in a low voice, "My lord, one of the men I sent to assassinate Ji Tianqing was injured and killed by him. After the mission failed, Ji Tianqing became more cautious. I didn't send any more men in the past few days, in case he finds out that it was me. My plan is to wait for him to let down his guard for a while, and then I'll send the strongest assassins from Tianyuan to carry out the mission. At that time, we'll be able to kill him in one blow and completely eradicate him." The Lord was still staring at the star map on the wall. His aura was cold and indifferent, and there was no change in his expression. He said in a strange voice that was hard to distinguish between a man and a woman, "Ji Tianqing's growth is too fast, and we've underestimated him. After tonight, it's inconvenient for me to show up, so your plan can be cancelled. Sending assassins to assassinate him is not a foolproof plan. Once the operation fails, your identity will be exposed. That idiot Qin Zheng is an example. Don't tell me you still don't understand?" Duanmu Yulong frowned and asked in a solemn tone, "Then what do you mean?" The High Lord said in a low voice, "There's no need to send assassins to assassinate him anymore. Just focus on preparing for next month's competition for the position of Territorial Lord. With your strength, you'll definitely be able to kill him in a duel on the arena. I have already made the arrangements. When the time comes, not only will you have to kill Ji Tianqing openly, but you will also have to seize the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. This matter is extremely important to me. You must complete this task, otherwise." The High Lord did not finish his sentence. However, his cold and imposing voice still caused Duanmu Yulong's body to tremble. A trace of fear flashed through his eyes. Duanmu Yulong only weighed the pros and cons for a moment before saying in a firm and resolute tone, "Lord, please rest assured. If I am unable to complete the mission, I will definitely commit suicide in front of you as an apology." "Very good. You are indeed worthy of being my right-hand man," the High Lord said in a sonorous tone. It was clear that he was very satisfied with his attitude and determination. Duanmu Yulong was very clear in his heart that he had made the right bet by committing suicide. If he was unable to complete the mission given by the High Lord, he would have to commit suicide as an apology. However, if he completed the mission, he would be the High Lord's #1 hero. He would become the High Lord's right-hand man. In the future, after the High Lord's great ambition was achieved, he would become one of the most respected experts of the human race. The Duanmu family would once again enjoy 1,000 years of glory. Thinking of this, Duanmu Yulong's mood was somewhat excited and expectant. He had already made up his mind. In the next 20 days, he would work hard to increase his strength. No matter what, he would complete the mission. He would kill Ji Tianqing and seize the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. Cloud Mist Courtyard, Pine Wave Hut. Ji Tianqing cultivated in the secret chamber for a whole day, and finally, he recovered his strength and vitality. He ended his cultivation, but did not leave the secret room. He took out the Star Divine Gold from his spatial ring and carefully examined it in his palm. This fist-sized oval-shaped crystal had a bumpy surface and reflected a dark golden brilliance. Although it was only the size of a fist, its weight was comparable to a 10,000-kilogram boulder. It was very shocking. Only a Sky Origin Stage expert like Ji Tianqing could hold it in his palm. If it were an ordinary Origin Core Stage expert, even if he could hold it in his palm, he would not be able to hold it for too long. Ji Tianqing frowned and sized up the Star Divine Gold with his sharp eyes. He muttered to himself in a low voice. Qin Zheng said that this Star Divine Gold can activate a mysterious gravitational force. What's going on? Puzzled, he activated a trace of true essence and injected it into the Star Divine Gold. Suddenly, the Star Divine Gold released a dazzling dark golden brilliance. It was like a lamp that lit up half of the secret room. Ji Tianqing also suddenly felt that the Star Divine Gold's weight had doubled, reaching 20,000 kilograms. Fortunately, he was mentally prepared and held the Star Divine Gold with both hands. If he was caught off guard, he was afraid that his wrist and finger bones would be crushed by the sudden increase in weight. I injected a trace of true essence, and the Star Divine Gold's weight doubled. Could this be the mysterious gravitational force that Qin Zheng mentioned? Ji Tianqing muttered doubtfully, and injected another trace of true essence into the Star Divine Gold. This time, the amount of true essence he injected was twice as much as before. Suddenly, the Star Divine Gold lit up with an even more dazzling golden light, illuminating the entire secret room. Ji Tianqing's hands suddenly sank. His knuckles and palms turned pale and bloodless. His bones also made a slight cracking sound. Obviously, the Star Divine Gold's weight had doubled again, reaching 30,000 kilograms. Such a terrifying weight was not something that the hands of an ordinary Sky Origin Stage expert could bear. Even though Ji Tianqing had cultivated the way of the sword and his body was stronger than that of an ordinary Sky Origin Stage expert, he could not bear it. Moreover, he could feel that the Star Divine Gold was releasing a formless force that enveloped the entire secret room. The air in the secret room also rippled and twisted silently. It was as if it was compressed and deformed by that formless force. Ji Tianqing hurriedly withdrew his true essence, causing the Star Divine Gold's brilliance to dim. Its weight also quickly returned to normal. He stared at the Star Divine Gold and thought to himself, injecting true essence into it can increase its weight exponentially. This Star Divine Gold is indeed amazing. But what's the use of increasing its weight? How can I use it to increase my strength? At this moment, the voice of the Burial of Heaven sounded in his mind. Tianqing, the The change of gravity is only one of the many effects of the star divine gold. If you use it to forge weapons, you will have a powerful combat strength and be invincible. Chapter 574. Upon hearing Burial of Heaven's voice, Ji Tianqing felt a lot more relaxed. Although Burial of Heaven was only an incomplete sword soul, he was very knowledgeable. He asked telepathically, "Burial of Heaven, I'm cultivating the path of Kenshin, but I haven't reached the realm of sword in my hand yet. Even if I use stellar divine gold to forge a divine weapon, it won't be very useful. Why don't you tell me how to use stellar divine gold to set up a heavenly spirit heavy array? How can it help me increase my strength quickly?" Burial of Heaven said in a low and solemn voice, "The method is very simple. You just have to use the array to activate the power of stellar divine gold to increase the gravity of the space. If you want to increase your strength quickly, you have to reach the 8th level of Sword Heart as soon as possible and cultivate your physical body to the limit to form an ultimate sword body. If you cultivate in an ordinary secret room and endure the normal gravity, your physical body will increase very slowly. However, if you set up a heavenly spirit heavy array in the secret room, you can increase the gravity in the secret room by 10 times, or even 20 times. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing was enlightened and immediately understood what Burial of Heaven meant. "I understand now. You mean that when I'm under 10 times the gravity, my physical body will be under even more pressure. In this environment, cultivating the 8th level of Sword Heart can stimulate the potential of my physical body even more, and I can cultivate an ultimate sword body faster. When I was in the Sky Pillar sect, I heard that there was a sword master who didn't make any progress for 5 years after his strength reached a bottleneck. Thus, that sword master entered the remote mountains and swamps, and under a 1,000-feet-tall waterfall, he endured the endless flow of water and practiced his sword techniques day and night. 3 years later, that sword master finally broke through and could cut the waterfall in half with a single sword strike. He wasn't strong enough to break through the shackles, so he relied on external pressure to stimulate his potential." Burial of Heaven said in a vigorous voice, "That's right, that's the reason. Physical body cultivation requires external help. Whether it's the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, gravity, or the power of the 5 elements, they can all temper the physical body. Now that you are only at the Heaven Origin stage, you can only set up a Heaven Origin stage array, so I will teach you how to set up the Heaven Origin heavy array. If you can reach the Martial God realm, I can teach you the method to set up divine level heavy formations. Once a divine level formation is set up, let alone 10 or 20 times the gravity, even 100 or 1,000 times the gravity can be achieved." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He asked in confusion, "Burial of Heaven, Martial God realm experts are almost equivalent to gods. Do they still need to refine their bodies? After crossing the celestial being limit and reaching the soul refining realm, don't you have to cultivate your soul and primordial spirit?" Burial of Heaven snorted coldly and said arrogantly, "That is an ordinary martial art. How can it be compared with the Kenshin Dao? The reason Kenshin was able to look down upon the world was because of the sword Dao he created. Not only could he control the power of heaven, earth, and stars, but he could also strengthen himself infinitely. Even if you reach the martial god realm, Kenshin Dao can strengthen your divine body to the extreme. Even if 3 or 5 martial gods of the same realm besiege you, they may not be able to defeat you." Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with shock. He also had a strong yearning and expectation. Although he had reached the 8th level of the Sword Heart Dao, and would soon be able to cultivate the Sword Heart, he deeply felt that this was only the first step in his cultivation of the Kenshin Dao. How wonderful was the inheritance of Kenshin! Cultivating the Sword Heart Dao was just the beginning. There were more powerful and extraordinary Sword Daos waiting for him to comprehend. Soon, Ji Tianqing calmed down and listened attentively to Burial of Heaven's guidance, learning the method to set up the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation. In Burial of Heaven's words, the Star Divine Gold was not a treasure that Tianyuan realm martial artists could come into contact with. Only a powerhouse who had surpassed the martial god realm like him had enough knowledge and experience to know how to use the Star Divine Gold. Although the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation could only activate 1% of the Star Divine Gold's power. This Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation was currently the most suitable formation for Ji Tianqing. With Ji Tianqing's attainment and talent in formations, Burial of Heaven only needed to explain in detail twice, and he had basically grasped it. After that, Ji Tianqing took out a large amount of formation materials from his space ring and began to try to set up the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation. After robbing Qin Zheng's space ring, he had not only obtained more than 40 Tianyuan realm manuals, but also priceless cultivation resources. Among those cultivation resources, there were not only spiritual stones, spiritual pills, weapons, and equipment, but also a large amount of materials for refining pills, refining weapons, and setting up formations. Ji Tianqing roughly estimated that the value of those cultivation resources was at least 20,000 spiritual stones. After preparing the formation materials, he set up the formation in the secret chamber under the guidance of Burial of Heaven. He placed the star divine gold in the middle of the secret chamber as the eye and core of the formation. He waved his hand and shot out all kinds of true essence brilliance, which wrapped around precious gems and embedded them on the floor of the secret chamber. For hours later, the basic framework of the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation was set up. Next, Ji Tianqing continuously used his true essence, waving his palms and shooting out countless rays of light, which were injected into the embryonic form of the grand formation. 8 hours later, the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation was set up successfully. Ji Tianqing rested for a while. When his true essence and stamina recovered, he activated the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation. Swoosh! The power of the Star Divine Gold was activated, and it lit up with a dazzling golden light. The golden light formed an 8-meter light shield, like an inverted bowl, enveloping Ji Tianqing. The Pomthic golden light shield contained an indestructible power. The gravity outside the shield was normal, but the 8-meter space inside the shield was 4 times the gravity outside. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the middle of the formation, feeling the power of 4 times the gravity. He only felt that his skin and meridians were slightly numb and itchy. With the strength of my physical body, I can barely feel 4 times the gravity. If I want to increase my strength quickly, this bit of gravity is not enough. This thought flashed through his mind, and he controlled the Heavenly Spirit Heavy formation to adjust the gravity to 6 times. Under 6 times the gravity, the numbness and itchiness all over his body became much worse. But this was not enough. Ji Tianqing controlled the formation and continued to increase the gravity. 8 times the gravity. Finally, the numbness and itchiness became more and more intense, and there was a faint stabbing pain. Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth and directly adjusted the gravity to 10 times. All of a sudden, the air within the golden light barrier was distorted and compressed until it was deformed. Ji Tianqing endured 10 times the gravity. His skin, meridians, and bones all over his body felt like they were being pierced by needles, and the pain was unbearable. His skin and small blood vessels could not withstand 10 times the gravity for the time being and gradually broke. Although he was enduring the tearing pain, and there were faint traces of blood on his skin. However, his eyes shone brightly as he let out a low shout filled with anticipation. Now! Chapter 575. When Ji Tianqing cultivated, the true energy spread throughout his body, and the pain from his body lessened a lot. His body was under the pressure of 10 times the normal gravity, and it was constantly damaged. However, he quickly healed his wounds with the true energy and used the 8th level of the Sword Heart art to refine his body. His body was improving rapidly. Ji Tianqing felt the pain of his pores being torn apart, and at the same time, he felt the pleasure of his body becoming stronger and stronger. He was immersed in this state of pain and happiness, and focused on cultivating in seclusion. 6 hours, 12 hours, 1 day had passed. Unknowingly, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for 2 days. After 2 days of cultivation, he had gradually adapted to the gravity. At this moment, he was sitting in the Heavenly Spirit Heavy array. His white robe was stained with blood, but his face was calm as usual. Even though he was under the pressure of 10 times the normal gravity, he was not in as much pain as before. He only felt that his skin was tingling, just like the first time he tried 8 times the normal gravity. I have only cultivated for 2 days, and my body has adapted to 10 times the normal gravity. Is the effect so weak? Ji Tianqing murmured in his heart. At this moment, the Burial of Heaven said in his mind, "It is not the effect of the array that has weakened. It is your body that has become stronger. It is gradually forming the body of a sword." Ji Tianqing was secretly happy. He quickly used his spiritual sense to check his own strength. He soon sensed that the burial of heaven was telling the truth. After 2 days of cultivation under 10 times the normal gravity, his body and strength had both increased by 20%. He was moving towards the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. This made Ji Tianqing excited, and he was full of confidence in the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array. This is great. With this gravity array assisting me in my cultivation, I will be able to increase my strength quickly. Maybe I can reach the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage before the next month's chief election. Ordinary Sky Origin stage cultivators usually needed 8 to 10 years, or even dozens of years to improve one level. For example, Chu Tiancheng and Xiang Wuji from the Sky Pillar sect had lived for 100 or 200 years, but they were only at the 4th and 5th level of the Sky Origin stage. If Ji Tianqing could raise his cultivation level by 1 level in a short month, it would truly be a shocking and unprecedented miracle. At this time, Burial of Heaven reminded him again, Tianqing, your strength has increased very quickly in the first few days, but it will slow down later. If you want to create a miracle and raise your cultivation by 1 level in a month, you will have to endure an even stronger gravity. In addition, you can also cultivate the 5 elemental secret arts and fuse the 5 elemental energy. All right, I understand. Ji Tianqing nodded solemnly and took out the Tianqing 5 Extremes cultivation method from his space ring. Next, he let the true essence in his body circulate by itself as he silently cultivated the 8th level of the Sword Heart Tao. His spiritual sense was focused on comprehending the secret method of Tianqing's 5 Extremes and communicating with the power of the 5 elements between heaven and earth. He was the only one who dared to use this kind of multitasking cultivation method. After all, he had died once and experienced the feeling of his soul being separated from his body. Now he had a nirvana crystal in his head, which made his soul and spiritual sense several times stronger than ordinary martial artists. Because of this, he was able to cultivate 2 different techniques at once without any accidents. If it were other martial artists, they would never be able to do it. Even if they tried, their minds would be damaged and they might even go mad. Time flew by and soon, another 5 days had passed. After 5 days of cultivation, Ji Tianqing not only adapted to cultivating 2 different cultivation methods under 10 times the gravity, but also improved his strength by 20%. Moreover, he successfully cultivated the power of the earth element. He didn't stop. He adjusted the gravity of the heavenly spiritual array to 12 times and continued to cultivate. Soon, another 8 days had passed. After 8 days and 8 nights of cultivation in seclusion, his strength improved by 20% again, and he successfully mastered the power of the wood element. By now, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for half a month. He not only mastered the power of the 5 elements, but also improved his strength by 60%. With another 40% improvement, he would reach the 3rd level of the Sky Origin stage. However, Buried Heaven reminded him at this moment that he needed to stop cultivating for the time being. Tianqing, you shouldn't cultivate anymore. You need to rest for a while. In this half a month, you will use the power of the heavenly spiritual array to cultivate in a self-destructive way. Although it can stimulate your potential and improve your strength quickly, it can strengthen your body. However, you can't be too hasty. You have to do it step by step. Otherwise, it will cause irreversible damage to your body. I know you want to reach the 3rd level of the Sky Origin stage as soon as possible. However, you have to understand that more haste, less speed. Although Ji Tianqing was eager to improve his strength, he still chose to listen to the Burial of Heaven's advice. All right, I will rest for 2 days. After I recover, I will cultivate again. Ji Tianqing responded and ended his seclusion. He walked out of the secret room. It was early in the morning. It was sunny outside the window. Ji Tianqing washed up and prepared to stretch his body in the yard. However, when he walked out of the door, he saw a few figures sitting at a stone table under a tree. They were discussing something in a low voice. He looked at them and saw that they were Ji Ke, Yan and Qian Yu. Besides them, there was a tall, handsome young man of the demon clan who was wearing a white fox fur coat. It was the Prince Kunwu. Ji Tianqing was stunned. He frowned and asked, "Why are they all here?" Yan Ji Ke, and Kunwu were discussing something. Qian Yu interrupted them occasionally. At this moment, everyone saw Ji Tianqing. They stopped their discussion and turned to look at him. Qian Yu was the first to react. He shouted in surprise, "Old Ji, You are finally out. We have been waiting for you for days. Yan Er also smiled happily. He waved at Ji Tianqing and said, Senior brother Tianqing, you are finally out. Jiku walked quickly to Ji Tianqing and said with a smile, Brother Tianqing, we are here to see you. Are you surprised? Even Kunwu stood up and cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing, greeting him. Prince Tianqing, how have you been? Ji Tianqing greeted everyone and sat on the stone bench under the tree. He started chatting with everyone. Why are you all here in Liantian City? You even came to Yunlan Courtyard? Qianyu quickly explained, Old Ji, we heard from Kunwu that you caused a huge commotion in Liantian City. You killed the city lord and even wanted to participate in the election for the district lord. We were all worried about you. We couldn't help you in the monarch mansion, so we rushed over to see you. Yanber nodded in agreement. Senior brother Tianqing, since you left the monarch mansion, no one has disturbed the Tianqing palace. Chapter 576. Originally, when Ji Tianqing left the monarch mansion, he was still a little worried. Therefore, he asked Yan Er, Jiku, and Qianyu to stay and guard Tianqing palace. However, after he left the monarch mansion, those imperial princes and those who were secretly plotting against him did not go to Tianqing palace again. Jiku, Yan Er, and Qianyu stayed in Tianqing palace with nothing to do. They heard from Kuan Wu that he had caused a disturbance in Liantian City and was in a dangerous situation. They were worried, so they rushed to Liantian City to visit. As early as 3 days ago, Jiku, Yan Er, and Qianyu arrived in Liantian City. They asked around in the city and found out that Ji Tianqing was staying in Yunlan Courtyard. Therefore, they rushed over. Now, they knew what happened half a month ago and the cause of it. Jiku and the others were not only worried about Ji Tianqing's actions, but they were also very shocked and impressed. Even Imperial Prince Kuan Wu looked at Ji Tianqing in a new light. Ji Tianqing and the others sat under a tree, drinking tea and chatting leisurely. They talked about what happened in Liantian City in the past half a month. After listening to Jiku, Kuan Wu, and the others, he found out that in the past half a month, there was a violent turmoil in Liantian City. Many forces were affected. More than a dozen big and small gangs and families were either annihilated or severely punished by the imperial court. After Qin Zheng was publicly beheaded, the Qin clan also fell apart. In a single night, the Qin clan declined into a small clan. In the decades when Qin Zheng was the city lord, the Qin family had offended many families and gangs. In the past, when the Qin family was powerful, those enemies did not dare to take revenge. Now that Qin Zheng was dead, the Qin family had completely fallen. Those enemies swarmed in. In just half a month, the Qin clan was completely annihilated by their enemies. The remaining fishes that escaped the net had already fled Zhongzhou, and no one knew where they were hiding. Ji Tianqing did not pity Qin Zheng and the Qin family at all. From Qin Zheng and Qin Feng's behavior, one could imagine how arrogant and despotic the Qin family was and how evil they were. If it wasn't for the fact that the Qin clan had committed so many evil deeds, they wouldn't have provoked so many enemies. Liantian City was in turmoil for a few days. After the city lord mansion was rebuilt and the new city lord arrived, things gradually calmed down. According to Kuan Wu, the new city lord was a trusted subordinate of Long Yunshao. He was firm and resolute. After the new city lord took office, he had been trying his best to deal with the various chaos in the city and the evil forces. Of course, Ji Tianqing was not concerned about these things. He only knew that Long Yunshao had benefited greatly from this storm, and his power had increased greatly. They chatted for an hour was left. At this moment, a guard came in the courtyard palace to Ji Palace. Reporting to young Master Ji, the Imperial Court's guards have just entered the city. They are preparing to announce the Imperial Court's edict on the Imperial Command platform. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked the guard, "What's the palace going to announce? If it's just about Liantian City, I won't take a look." The guard shook his head and quickly explained, "I heard from the palace's palace that the palace's announcement is about the territorial lord selection next month." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I understand. You may leave." After the guard left, he frowned and thought for a while. He smiled and said, "The palace should be announcing the list of candidates for the Tianqian territorial lord selection. Let's go take a look." After saying that, he got up and walked out of the courtyard. Kuan Wu, Jiku, Yen and the others quickly followed him out of the courtyard and rushed to the palace. The palace was located in the square in the center of Liantian City. It was a 100-meter-tall formation platform. Through the power of the formation, it conveyed and announced the imperial palace's orders to the people in the city. There was an imperial command platform like this in every major city of the Central Plains. It was used to convey the imperial court's orders. When Ji Tianqing and the others arrived at the Emperor Token platform, there were already 2,000 to 3,000 people gathered in the plaza. They were all martial artists who had heard the news and came to check the edict. Everyone was gathered in the square, staring at the majestic black Emperor Token platform that was 100 meters tall. They were whispering to each other. On the Imperial Command platform, there was a huge stone tablet that displayed the Imperial Court's edict. Below the stone tablet stood a team of 9 Imperial Guards in golden armor. The leader of the Imperial Guards held a golden jade slip in his hand. The group of Imperial Guards stood solemnly in silence, as motionless as stone statues. Clearly, the Imperial Court's edict had not been issued yet. Ji Tianqing guessed that perhaps it was not time yet. The whispers and discussions of thousands of people entered the ears of Ji Tianqing and the others like a torrential flood. I wonder who will be on the list issued by the Imperial Court this time. Is there a need to ask? It must be those geniuses and experts. Those who are qualified to compete for the position of the Tianqin Territorial Lord must be those princes and disciples of the major families. I heard that there are many people who signed up for the selection of the Territorial Lord this time. There should be more than 30 of them, right? Even if those geniuses and experts signed up, the Imperial Court still has to screen them out. I wonder how many people will be left on the list in the end. The Territorial Lord is one of the most honorable figures in our clan. There will definitely be many geniuses and princes fighting for it. There will be a good show to watch by then. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ke, and the others listened to the discussions of the audience. They were looking forward to it. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. More than 10,000 people had gathered around the plaza. Many martial artists and commoners were staring at the stone tablet on the Emperor Token platform, waiting for the Imperial Court's edict to appear. Finally, the Imperial Guard captain spoke. He announced in a loud voice, "The time has come. I will now issue the Imperial Court's edict." As he spoke, he held the golden jade slip with both hands and injected his true origin energy into it. The other 8 golden armor Imperial Guards also joined forces and injected their true origin energy into the Emperor Token platform. Suddenly, the huge stone tablet that was dozens of meters tall lit up with dense white light, forming a huge white light screen. As the Imperial Guard captain read out the edict, golden words appeared on the white light screen. The Imperial Court's edict. The position of the Tianqin Territorial Lord has been vacant for a long time. The Imperial Court is worried about the hundreds of millions of commoners in the Tianqin Territorial Lord, and hereby convenes the selection of the Territorial Lord. After the news was announced, a total of 30 geniuses from our clan signed up for the selection. After careful screening, the Imperial Court has selected 10 powerful and suitable candidates with both integrity and talent. These 10 candidates have passed the first round of the Imperial Court's assessment. They will head to the Imperial Court to participate in the second round of the assessment at the end of this month. The Imperial Guard captain's voice was like the morning bell and evening drum. It was powerful and heavy. It echoed above the plaza and was clearly heard by the tens of thousands of people. Chapter 577. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the captain of the Imperial Guards announced the order loudly. The first candidate is Duanmu Yulong. He is 32 years old. He is the crown prince of the monarch mansion. He ranks 9th among all the crown princes. Duanmu Yulong was born in the Duanmu clan. He is the son of the first wife of the Duanmu clan. He is at Sky Origin Stage Level 6. The 10 candidates selected by the Imperial Court would announce their identity and strength. Only in this way could the Imperial Court be fair and open. When the people in the square heard Duanmu Yulong's name, they started to discuss noisily. The son of the first wife of the Duanmu clan? He is the 9th crown prince? Isn't that too honorable and powerful? Just as I expected, the candidates selected by the Imperial Court must not only have extraordinary talent and powerful strength, but also have a strong background. Of course, no matter how powerful a genius is, there is a limit to his strength. Without a strong background, How can he be the leader of an area? That's right. The current 8 territorial lords are all top-notch experts and have powerful backgrounds. Only then can they sit firmly in the position of territorial lord. When Ji Tianqing heard the captain of the Imperial Guard's announcement, he frowned slightly. A touch of gloominess flashed in his eyes. Kuan Wu turned to look at him and said seriously, Ji Tianqing, if you are going to compete for the leader's position, Duanmu Yulong will definitely be one of your strongest opponents. Ji Tianqing understood, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded. When the discussion died down, the captain of the Imperial Guards continued to announce, the second candidate is Qianshan Jinwu. He is 50 years old. Qianshan Jinwu is the eldest son of the Qianshan clan. He is the governor of the Smoky Wing City. He is at Sky Origin Stage Level 7. When the people heard the name, they started to discuss intensely again. Qianshan clan? Is it the Qianshan clan that has hundreds of years of history in the Qianshan ancient realm? The Qianshan clan is second only to the 3 great clans. They are also an ancient clan with a strong foundation. Qianshan Jinwu? He's also an influential figure. During the years when he was the city lord of Smoke Wing City, he had done several great things that shook the entire central state. He is a capable genius. It's a pity that Qianshan Jinwu was already over 30 years old when he reached the Sky Origin stage. Otherwise, he would have been able to enter the royal palace and become a noble prince. Qianshan Jinwu is already the city lord of the Smoky Wing City. If he becomes the city lord of the Tianshan region, the Qianshan family's power will increase greatly. Duanmu Yulong is a genius prince, and Qianshan Jinwu is a famous Sky Origin realm warrior. Both of them are too strong. It seems that the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord will be chosen from the 2 of them. If Qianshan Jinwu can become the realm lord, the Qianshan family's power will increase tremendously. It's very likely that they will become the 4th most powerful family. Ji Tianqing listened to the discussions of the people and remembered the name Qianshan Jinwu in his heart. The governor of Smoke Wing City, level 7 of Sky Origin Stage. He muttered to himself as his expression became even more solemn. The Imperial Guard continued. The 3rd candidate is Yu Zhengfei, the son of the Yu family in River Origin City. He is level 5 of Sky Origin Stage. The Yu family has been guarding the border for generations. They have been heroes for 5 generations. They are the role models of our soldiers. Yu Zhengfei has been guarding the border of the Western Wilderness for 15 years. He has made over 100 contributions to the war. He is the son of a hero and a great general in the army. The people in the square began to discuss again when they heard Yu Zhengfei's name. Many of the people were not familiar with the Donglin and the Western Wilderness battlefield. They had never heard of Yu Zhengfei's name. However, the Yu family of River Origin City was like thunder to the ears, their reputation spreading far and wide. This was because the Yu family had elites serving in the army for generations. They were guarding the border of the Western Wilderness. The current leader of the Yu family was one of the 4 divine generals of the imperial court. He was a powerful cultivator in the spirit cultivation stage. The 4 divine generals were second only to the leaders of the 3 ancient clans. They were extremely prestigious. Although Yu Zhengfei was not the imperial prince of the imperial court, nor was he the son of the 3 ancient clans, his status was still very high. Furthermore, he was a general of the imperial court. He had made many contributions in the war and was highly regarded by the imperial court. In the eyes of the people, he was also one of the strong candidates for the Tianshan region lord. After that, the captain of the Imperial Guards read out the names of a few contestants, one after another, and gave a brief introduction of their identities and abilities. The 4th candidate is Lu Zikong, the 37th Imperial Prince in the Imperial Court. Lu Zikong is the eldest son of the Lu family in Spring Leaf City. He is 35 years old and has reached level 4 of Sky Origin Stage. When Ji Tianqing went to the Imperial Court to observe the ceremony, he had seen Lu Zikong. However, he did not take him seriously. The 4th level Sky Origin Stage Crown Prince was talented and powerful, but he wasn't a threat to Yi Chen. The 5th candidate is Lu Ziyuan. He is 34 years old and the son of the Lu family in the Dark Blue Ancient Realm. He is the 42nd Imperial Prince in the Imperial Court. He is at level 4 of Sky Origin Stage. The 6th candidate is Yi Yifan. He is 30 years old and the son of the Yi family in Sunset City. He is the 49th Imperial Prince in the Imperial Court. He is at level 3 of Sky Origin Stage. The seventh candidate is Di Jianqing. He is the chief disciple of the Sword faction in Green Crane Valley. He is 46 years old, and he is at level 5 of Sky Origin Stage. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing frowned and was somewhat puzzled. The chief disciple of the Sword faction in Green Crane Valley is at level 5 of Sky Origin Stage. Chu Tiancheng, the leader of the Sky Pillar faction in the Tianjin region, was only at level 4 of Sky Origin Stage. The chief disciple of the Sword faction in Green Crane Valley was at level 5 of Sky Origin Stage. That was shocking. Kuan Wu saw the confusion on his face and explained with a smile. The Sword faction is a hidden faction. They rarely show themselves in the world. However, when their disciples show themselves, something big happens. Even I, a member of the Yao clan, have heard of the Sword faction in Green Crane Valley. You probably don't know much about the Central State, so it's normal that you don't know about the Sword faction. The Sword faction is an ancient faction that has been passed down for 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, they had a spirit refinement stage cultivator who was called the Sword Sovereign. It is said that the Sword Sovereign once sparred with Kenshin. Although Kenshin hadn't reached the God realm at that time, and the Sword Sovereign couldn't even take one hit from him. However, to be able to spar with Kenshin is a great honor. To the Sword Sovereign and the Sword faction, it is a great honor. It is also the reason why the Sword faction has dominated the Central State for 1,000 years. After hearing Kuan Wu's explanation, Ji Tianqing understood that the Sword faction was a 1,000-year-old faction that had been passed down by a spirit refinement stage cultivator. It was not something the Sky Pillar faction could compare to. After a while, the captain of the Imperial Guards read out the names of 2 more candidates and introduced their backgrounds and strengths. The situation was just as the commoners had said. Among the 9 candidates, Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu were the strongest and most famous. The position of the Tianjin region lord would most likely fall into the hands of one of them. Chapter 578. The Imperial Guard captain had already announced the list of the 9 contestants, but Ji Tianqing was not among them. Ji Ku and Yen Er's hearts were in their mouths as they looked worried. Ji Ku said worriedly, "This is already the 9th person on the list. Why hasn't Brother Tianqing been announced yet? Could it be that the Imperial Court eliminated Brother Tianqing? It shouldn't be. Brother Tianqing defeated the Demon King and saved the Star Ancient Realm and the Tianjin region. He's the hero of the Tianjin region." Yen Er was also anxious as she said in a low voice, "Junior Kuku, don't worry. There's still the last spot. It's definitely Brother Tianqing's." Kuan Wu shook his head and said solemnly, "You've probably forgotten that the Murong clan's crown prince, Murong Lingfeng, will definitely not let go of the chance to fight for the region leader's position. Murong Lingfeng's strength seems to be stronger than Duanmu Yulong's. Even Duanmu Yulong passed the first round of assessment. Murong Lingfeng must be on the list." When they heard his analysis, Ji Ku and Yen Er instantly became even more anxious, and their expressions became even more unsightly. Ji Tianqing was also worried. After all, he was not sure how the Imperial Court would treat him. If he was not on the list, he would not even have the chance to fight for the region leader's position. How sad would that be? Finally, the Imperial Guard captain announced the 10th contestant's name loudly. The 10th contestant, Ji Tianqing, is the 56th crown prince of the imperial residence. He has the strength of Sky Origin Stage 2. When the 3 golden words Ji Tianqing appeared on the imperial token stage, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku heaved a sigh of relief. However, the other 9 contestants' introductions were mostly a few hundred words long. The least was 100 or 200 words long. Only Ji Tianqing's introduction was so simple. The people in the square immediately burst into a clamor of discussion. Many of them were even shocked. What's going on? The 10th contestant is Ji Tianqing? Ji Tianqing? Isn't he the crown prince who barged into the city lord's mansion at night and captured city lord Qinjing? Oh my god! It was actually him? That guy is so daring. It's already surprising that the imperial court didn't punish him, but they actually let him participate in the competition? The other contestants are all descendants of aristocratic families and have powerful backgrounds behind them. Why does this guy have nothing? Yes, apart from being a prince, he has no background at all. And he is the weakest of them all, only at the 2nd level of Sky Origin Stage. Tisk TSK, adding this guy to the list of candidates is a total joke. Do you want to use his weakness to set off the strength of the other contestants? Most people didn't understand this at all. They were mocking him and taking pleasure in his misfortune. In the eyes of the crowd, Ji Tianqing's strength and influence were completely incomparable to the other participants. If he could become the Tianqin region lord, it would be the biggest joke in the world. All kinds of discussions and mocking laughter poured into the ears of Ji Tianqing and the others like a tide. Ji Ku, Yan and Qian Yu were full of anger. In their anger, they wanted to reason with the people who were mocking them. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He said indifferently, "Don't bother about those people. They're just ignorant weaklings. They are weak, but they worship the strong. They themselves were poor and lowly, but they admired and envied the influential figures of the rich and powerful families. For such people, only facts can shut their mouths and convince them wholeheartedly." When Ji Ku and Yan heard this, they immediately nodded in agreement. Humph! These people who look down on others are too despicable. When Senior Tianqing becomes the Tianqin region lord, I'd like to see if these ignorant bastards will be so shocked that their eyeballs will fall out and they will be so ashamed that they won't be able to show their faces. Kuan-Wu was silent. He glanced sideways at Ji Ku and Yan. He thought to himself, these two little guys don't understand how terrifying those genius princes are. They trust Ji Tianqing so much that it's almost blind. Not to mention Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. Even those ordinary princes and geniuses are not people that Ji Tianqing can defeat. Although he is in the list of participants, he is destined to be eliminated. Sigh. Kuan-Wu sighed silently. He seemed to have foreseen the result. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. He led the crowd out of the square and returned to Yunlan courtyard. The imperial court's edict had been issued, and the list of participants was out. The imperial guard captain put away the golden jade slip and led the 8 imperial guards out of the square and back to the imperial court. The stone tablet on the emperor token stage was still shining with golden light and exuding a sacred and majestic aura. According to the usual practice, the thousands of golden words on the stone tablet would be displayed on the emperor token stage for about half a month before disappearing on its own. The edict issued by the imperial court was not only displayed in Liantian City, but also in all the human cities in Zhongzhou. Almost at the same time, in the hundreds of human cities in Zhongzhou, hundreds of millions of people were discussing the list. Duanmu Yulong, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others were naturally the focus of the people. However, the person that the commoners were talking about the most was Ji Tianqing, a commoner with no reputation. The people in Zhongzhou cities were still unfamiliar with the name Ji Tianqing. Even if some people had heard of him, it was because he had defeated the emperor on the emperor platform and successfully entered the emperor mansion. In the eyes of the people in Zhongzhou, although he was a noble prince, he had just entered the emperor mansion. His strength was too weak and could not be compared with the other 9 participants. No one was optimistic about him. Most of them were even gloating and mocking him, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. After returning to Yunlan's residence, Ji Tianqing greeted Yun Yao. There were still 13 days until the end of the month. In the next few days, he would continue to cultivate in seclusion. He would only come out of seclusion at the end of the month and head to the imperial court to participate in the second round of the assessment. Yun Yao also learned about the list of participants. She knew that the other 9 participants were all geniuses and princes. Ji Tianqing wanted to stand out from the other 10 participants and become the Tianqin region lord. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, she had confidence in Ji Tianqing and agreed with his decision. She told him to cultivate in seclusion without worrying about anything else. Ji Tianqing gave Ji Ku and Yan a few more instructions before returning to the secret room in his residence. After entering the secret room, he activated the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array and adjusted the gravity to 15 times. He cultivated in a self-destructive way. After all, with his current strength, he could not compete with Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. He only had 13 days left. Chapter 579. Ji Tianqing was sitting cross-legged in the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array. His body was covered in colorful light. The 15x gravity and the power of the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array made him suffer a horrible pressure. The skin all over his body was constantly cracking, revealing dense cracks. Even the tiny blood vessels were rupturing. However, he had cultivated the 8th level of the Sword Heart Tao. He had used his majestic and vigorous true essence to constantly heal his injuries. Plus, he had merged with the Kenshin blood meridians. His body's self-healing ability was very strong. The wounds on his skin, bones, and flesh were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then they cracked and healed again. Under the condition of cracking and healing, Ji Tianqing suffered an unimaginable pain. It was like his body was being cut by thousands of knives. Even though his soul had merged with the nirvana crystal, his soul power was strong and his will was firm. However, the pain made him want to die. He almost fainted. However, he gritted his teeth and persevered with his tenacious willpower and the belief in his heart. Since I have decided to take the position of Tianqin Region Lord, I will not give up so easily. No matter how much pain I have to endure, I have to reach Sky Origin Stage LV3 in 13 days. The position of Tianqin Region Lord must not fall into the hands of the Duanmu family. Those who looked down on me, mocked me, and gloated over my misfortune will regret it. Ji Tianqing shouted in his heart. He crazily operated his martial arts to strengthen his body and perfect his sword body. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 6 days passed. After 6 days of crazy cultivation, Ji Tianqing finally adapted to the 15x gravity. It was not as painful as before. His power and physical strength had increased by 20%. He was closer to Sky Origin Stage LV3. Ji Tianqing did not stop cultivating. He sat cross-legged in the array and operated his martial arts to strengthen his body. There are 7 days left. I have to increase my power by 20% and reach Sky Origin Stage LV3. Under the 15x gravity, my power is increasing slower and slower. Since that is the case, let's adjust the gravity to 18x. He adjusted the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array to increase the gravity to 18x. Suddenly, an invisible gravitational force enveloped him, and the skin all over his body quickly cracked open and dark red blood seeped out. A heart-wrenching pain came, causing his muscles and nerves to convulse and break out in cold sweat. However, he gritted his teeth and continued to cultivate without any regard for the consequences. In addition to tempering his body, he also divided his attention and cultivated the Tianqing 5 Extremes cultivation method at the same time. This heaven-level superior-grade cultivation method not only contained the internal cultivation method for cultivating the power of the 5 elements, but also 6 very special and mysterious secret skills of the 5 elements. The first move was called Slash of the Metal Emperor. It used the ultimate power of the metal element between heaven and earth to slash out a sword that could tear apart heaven and earth. The second move was called the Wood Emperor's Umbrella. It could draw upon the purest wood-type energy in the world to condense into a large umbrella that could cover the sky. It could be used for both offense and defense, and it also had the ability to heal injuries. The third secret skill was called Black Water Rope, the fourth secret skill was called Scorching Sun Flame, and the fifth secret skill was called Earth Emperor Shield. The first 5 secret skills used the power of each element, while the 6th secret skill was the most powerful one. It was called Tianqing's 5 Extremes. This secret skill combined the power of the 5 elements. It could allow a cultivator to fly in the sky, walk on fire and water, and control everything. Ji Tianqing knew that if he could cultivate Tianqing's 5 Extremes to a high level, he would be able to travel in the world and control everything. That would be a very mysterious and unimaginable state. 7 days had passed without him noticing. He had been cultivating in seclusion for 13 days. It was time for him to come out. At this moment, he had finally improved his cultivation by 100%. He had reached the 3rd level of Sky Origin Stage. At the moment when he successfully broke through, Ji Tianqing's body lit up with colorful spiritual light. His body was bursting with a tremendous amount of true origin qi. He operated his martial art and shook it slightly. The dust and dirt on his white robe were all removed. His robe was now spotless. He was not far away from the ultimate body of sword. His body was transparent, and he could perfectly communicate with the spiritual qi in the world. Of course, his true origin qi, soul, physical defense, speed, and strength had all been doubled. With all these factors combined, his real combat ability was more than twice as powerful as before. Phew! Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation. He exhaled a mouthful of colorful turbid air and opened his eyes. At that moment, there seemed to be thunder and lightning bursting out from his clear and deep eyes, tearing apart the dark space in front of him. A confident and overbearing aura of a powerhouse was emitted from his body. He got up, dusted his robe, and stepped out of the secret room. Swish! He opened the door of the secret room and returned to the room. It was early in the morning. The sky outside the window was getting brighter. There was a glimmer of the morning sun. At the door, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Yen and the others were already waiting for him. Seeing Ji Tianqing, everyone smiled excitedly and expectantly. Yun Yao was the first to speak. She asked in a concerned tone, "Tianqing, you've finally come out. How's your cultivation?" Ji Ku and Yen said in unison, "Look at brother Tianqing in high spirits. Your strength must have improved again." Qian Yu looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile and said confidently, "I'm willing to bet that old Ji has broken through to the next level." Everyone looked at him expectantly, waiting for him to announce the result. Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He just smiled and nodded. After getting his confirmation, everyone was pleasantly surprised and felt that it was incredible. "This is incredible. Brother Tianqing, you've improved from Sky Origin Stage LV2 to Sky Origin Stage LV3 in less than a month? This is a miracle. Even the #1 genius of the human race, Long Yunxiao, took more than half a year to improve from Sky Origin Stage LV1 to Sky Origin Stage LV2. Humph. If those snobbish fellows were to know of this news, they would definitely be scared to death." Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and said, "Well, the Imperial Court will hold the second round of the assessment today. Let's set off now." After saying that, he led everyone out of Yunlan Courtyard and rushed to the Imperial Court as fast as lightning. He flew in the front while Yun Yao rode on the spiritual crane and followed closely behind. Qian Yu carried Yen, and Ji Ku and followed them. About 2 hours later, everyone arrived at the Imperial Court and came to the foot of sky-reaching peak. Tens of thousands of martial artists had already gathered at the huge square at the foot of the mountain. These people had heard the news in advance and came to watch the second round of the assessment. Only a small number of them were the people of the surrounding cities. Most of them were the masters and powerhouses of various forces. Ji Tianqing landed on the square. After observing for a while, he knew that the second round of the assessment would be held at the square at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 580. On the square at the foot of sky-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people were gathered in a circle. In the middle of the square, there was a high platform with a radius of 100 meters. More than 100 Imperial Court guards in golden armor were guarding the high platform. On a small piece of empty land near the high platform, there were 9 valiant and noble powerhouses. Those 9 divine origin powerhouses were the 9 prodigies on the list. They stood proudly in the middle of the square and looked at the high platform calmly, waiting for the test to begin. The tens of thousands of people in the square had their eyes on those 9 prodigies. They were quietly sizing them up and discussing in low voices. Many cultivators and commoners had heard of those 9 prodigies, but they had never seen them in person. At that moment, they were all excited to see those prodigies in person. Ji Tianqing led Yun Yao and the others through the crowded square and toward the high platform. When he arrived at the front of the crowd, he saw a few familiar thearchs who were also watching the test. Those people were Kuan Wu, Murong Lingfeng, Ling Yixiong, Fox Princess from the Demon Clan, and Crown Prince Tai Yi from the Aquatic Clan. Ling Yixiong and Kuan Wu nodded at him when they saw him. Ji Tianqing greeted the two of them and walked to the empty land below the high platform. He stood side by side with the 9 prodigies and waited for the test to begin. The high platform was empty. There were no Imperial Court powerhouses. There was only an ancient stone door standing there. That dark brown stone door, which was 30 meters tall, seemed to have experienced thousands of years. It exuded an ancient aura. Mysterious array patterns were engraved on the stone door, faintly exuding the power of the array. However, Ji Tianqing could not see through the formation on the stone door even after observing it for a while. He could not tell what type of array it was, nor could he tell the grade of the array. This result made him very sure that the array on the stone door, which looked simple and unadorned, must have surpassed the divine origin level. It should be a soul-level array. While he was observing the stone door, the prodigies beside him were also secretly sizing it up. The Sky Prides had already made sufficient preparations and understood the information of each contestant. However, everyone was unfamiliar with Ji Tianqing. It was the first time for many of them to see him. While everyone was sizing him up, his expression didn't change in the slightest. His demeanor was still as calm as ever. He even sized up the other heaven's favorites without hesitation. On the way to Imperial Court just now, Yun Yao gave him a piece of information about the other contestants. Ji Tianqing looked at the prodigies around him and quickly identified them. The most eye-catching one was a young man who was tall and sturdy like an iron tower, wearing a golden dragon-patterned armor. This person had thick brows and large eyes. His face was firm and resolute as if it was carved by a blade, and his features were clearly defined. Moreover, his eyes that were large like copper bells contained a terrifying might. His entire body exuded a dense murderous aura. This was a murderous aura that had been tempered through hundreds of battles and killing tens of thousands of enemies. It was impossible for ordinary experts to possess such a murderous aura. Without a doubt, this person was the descendant of a divine general, Yu Zhengfei of River Origin City's Yu family. The other person who attracted Ji Tianqing's attention was a handsome young man wearing a silver-white star-patterned robe and carrying an ancient cloud-scarred sword on his back. This person was tall and handsome. He exuded an otherworldly aura. He didn't seem like someone from the mortal world. Instead, he seemed more like a reclusive sword Dao grandmaster. Ji Tianqing sensed a majestic and exquisite sword intent from this person. He immediately confirmed that this young man who looked to be in his 30s must be the top disciple of Green Crane Valley's sword faction, Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing's actual age was 46. However, martial artists who had reached the primal core realm and above could maintain their youthful appearance. For example, a divine prime expert like Chu Tiansheng would look like a middle-aged man even if he lived to 150 years old. Therefore, a divine prime expert like Di Jianqing, who was 46 years old, was truly very young and extremely talented. Apart from Yu Zhengfei and Di Jianqing, the two people Ji Tianqing paid the most attention to were Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. Duanmu Yulong was the imperial prince of the monarch residence. He had met him several times and wasn't unfamiliar with him. Qianshan Jinwu, who had been famous for a long time but had never met before, attracted his attention. Among the 10 participants, Qianshan Jinwu was the oldest, already 50 years old. However, he was the strongest, having reached Sky Origin Stage 7th layer. No one could catch up to him. Moreover, Qianshan Jinwu's appearance and temperament were no different from a 30-year-old youth. He wore a black robe, a black cape embroidered with dragons, and a purple gold crown on his head. His bronze face revealed a resolute and domineering aura. When Ji Tianqing sized him up, their gazes met. Ji Tianqing immediately felt that in Qianshan Jinwu's deep eyes, there was a coldness like 1,000-year-old ice that wouldn't melt. It sent chills down one's spine and made one's heart tremble. He could feel that Qianshan Jinwu must be the kind of person who would kill without batting an eyelid. He was extremely powerful and ruthless. Not long after, 3 streams of light flew down from the top of the sky-connecting peak. The person in the lead was the imperial tutor. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and flew in the air like an immortal. Behind him was the emperor, Long Yunshao, on his left, and a guard commander on his right. The 3 flew down from the top of the mountain and landed on the high platform in the middle of the square under everyone's gaze. Immediately, hundreds of golden armor guards knelt down on one knee and saluted. Ji Tianqing, the 9 elites, and the nearly 10,000 martial artists in the square also bowed to the imperial tutor and the emperor. The imperial tutor stood proudly on the platform and nodded slightly. He waved his horsetail whisk and motioned everyone to rise. Then, the imperial tutor said in a dignified tone, "Today, the 10 contestants are gathered in the imperial court. Under the supervision of the imperial court and the people, the second round of assessment will be carried out. This assessment will be personally presided over and supervised by me. Later, I will open the portal and send the 10 contestants to the giant holy city. Now, the giant holy city is suffering from a disaster. The people are in a panic and have no way to make a living. After the 10 contestants arrive at the giant holy city, they must try their best to resolve the crisis and save the people of the giant holy city. In the process, everyone can show their strengths and use various means and methods. After this assessment, the imperial court will conduct a comprehensive assessment based on everyone's performance in the giant holy city. At that time, 5 out of the 10 contestants will pass the assessment, and the other 5 will be eliminated." After hearing the imperial tutor's words, Ji Tianqing and the 9 elites' expressions changed slightly and revealed complicated expressions. The nearly 10,000 people in the square all looked at the ancient stone door on the high platform in unison, and a burst of clamorous discussion broke out. "So this is the second round of assessment. I thought it would be a martial arts competition." The imperial court wants to select the Tianqian region lord. The requirements for the contestants must be very strict. Not only must they be powerful, but they must also test other abilities, right? The 10 elites will enter a city and show their strengths to resolve the crisis. It must be very exciting, right? Will they fight with each other and kill each other? Chapter 581. It didn't take long for the imperial tutor to announce the official start of the assessment. After that, he used his power to release a 5-colored aura and injected it into the ancient stone gate to open the portal. Duanmu Yulong, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others took the lead and stepped into the portal. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Duanmu Yulong, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others disappeared into the portal. Ji Tianqing was the last to enter the portal. After passing through the portal, he was teleported to Giant Holy City like the other 9 participants. At this time, the imperial tutor used his majestic power to activate the array on the high platform. Then, a white light shield with a radius of dozens of meters appeared on the high platform. The surface of the light shield was like a mirror or a screen, showing the image of Giant Holy City and the figures of the 10 participants. Nearly 10,000 people in the square could see the movements of Ji Tianqing and the others through the images on the light shield. In this way, the second round of assessment was carried out under the supervision of the people. What Ji Tianqing and the others did in Giant Holy City would be shown to the public without any omission. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing saw the scene in front of him change. He appeared out of thin air on a dark brown wasteland, stepping on countless broken bluestones. He looked down and saw that the broken stones were originally slabs of bluestone. There was a whistling cold wind blowing around with a bit of chilliness and a murderous aura. The sky was full of haze and there were large patches of gray fog and thick clouds, making the light between heaven and earth dim and the atmosphere very depressing. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked ahead. He saw a dark brown, ancient city 1,000 meters away. It was a huge and majestic ancient city with towering walls up to 100 meters high and a wide gate that could allow 10 horses to walk side by side. On the lintel above the city gate, there were 3 quaint words engraved. Giant Holy City. There was a wide moat outside the city gate. In the nearly 100-meter wide moat, there was a surging river. However, this ancient and majestic city that seemed to have a history of thousands of years was dilapidated at this time. The tall and wide city gate was half closed. The drawbridge of the city gate had long been broken and scattered on the ground. Huge cracks also appeared on the towering and sturdy stone walls, revealing many gaps. The broken bricks were scattered on the ground and in the moat. The wide moat had long been blocked. The surging river water had already overflowed the riverbank and was pouring into the city gate. Ji Tianqing could still clearly hear cries and shouts coming from all over the city. There were also raging flames and thick smoke rising into the sky. There was no doubt that this ancient giant spiritual city had just experienced a disaster. Ji Tianqing frowned and observed for a moment. Then he frowned and whispered, "What disaster has this giant spirit city experienced? Is it a natural disaster or a war?" There was no answer. He could only wait until he entered the city to investigate. The other contestants obviously had the same idea. Everyone took a few glances at the city gate, then stepped across the dark brown wasteland and rushed towards the city gate. Ji Tianqing was not willing to fall behind. He quickly followed the footsteps of the contestants and arrived at the city gate. There were many huge bricks scattered in the wide city gate, as well as some fragments of weapons and armors, and more than a dozen guards' bodies. But other than that, there were no living guards inside or outside the city gate. After discovering this situation, several contestants immediately expressed their opinions. Duanmu Yulong said with a dignified expression, "We are very unfamiliar with this giant spiritual city. We still don't know what happened here. It is imperative that we enter the city as soon as possible to investigate the disaster, so that we can find a way to save the people." Among the 10 contestants, his status was the most distinguished. There was a faint sense of controlling the overall situation in his tone. Qianshan Jinwu exuded a majestic aura. With a gloomy face, he said in a dignified tone, "The city gate is half closed. More than a dozen guards have died in battle, but no other guards have appeared. Such a completely unguarded situation can only explain one problem. The giant spiritual city must have suffered heavy casualties, and the whole city is in chaos. In my opinion, we should enter the city first and understand the situation from the people. We should pacify the people as soon as possible and control the chaotic situation in the city. Everyone knew that Qianshan Jinwu was the governor of Yeni City and had rich experience in managing a city. This assessment was very beneficial to him, which greatly increased his chances of winning the title of chief. What he said was also a clear and organized decision. Several contestants immediately nodded and agreed with Qianshan Jinwu's words. Everyone crossed the brick ruins in the city gate and entered the giant spiritual city to check the situation in the city. Duanmu Yulong spoke for the first time. He wanted to show his majesty and establish prestige as soon as possible. But he did not expect that Qianshan Jinwu's seemingly casual words would suppress his limelight and win the support of several geniuses. This made him a little unhappy. He frowned and wanted to compete with Qianshan Jinwu. After all, in everyone's opinion, the winner and loser would be decided between him and Qianshan Jinwu in this battle for the position of chief. However, no one noticed that Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this time, was not only looking around with sharp eyes, but also carefully observing a few cracks. He even checked the corpses of the guards that were buried in the ruins and turned into minced meat. Although he did not speak, he had a prediction and judgment in his heart. Judging from the damage to the city wall and the city gate, the disaster in the giant spiritual city is not a natural disaster or a war, but an invasion by the strong. The guards were not killed by weapons, but directly killed by the powerful shock wave. Their bodies were smashed into meat paste by the gravel. While this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianqing was also secretly vigilant. In the unfamiliar giant spiritual city, no one knew what dangers there would be. He must act steadily. After a while, everyone entered the giant spiritual city and saw the situation in the city clearly. They saw that the broad streets in the city had been twisted and broken, and there were many gullies and pits. Most of the tall buildings and buildings on both sides of the street were also broken or collapsed, turning into ruins. Many places were ablaze with raging flames and thick smoke rising into the air. Many people were seriously injured and panicked. While running away in a panic, they kept shouting in grief and indignation. Duanmu Yulong and several contestants quickly stopped several people who were fleeing in panic and asked what had happened in the city. Those people were so frightened that their minds were a little confused. Chapter 582. Qianshan Jinwu frowned when he saw that the contestants couldn't get an answer. Expressionlessly, he sent out a few streaks of green light, knocking those commoners unconscious. Then, with a wave of his hand, he grabbed the fainted commoners and threw them to the candidates behind him. It's useless to ask them. Take them with you and see what happens in the city. Qianshan Jinwu's method might not be effective, but it was very domineering. The contestants didn't want to take the unconscious people with them, nor did they want to follow Qianshan Jinwu's orders. After all, they weren't his subordinates. However, they didn't dare to leave the unconscious people behind. They were afraid that it would affect their performance and cause them to be eliminated by the imperial court. Lu Zikong, Lu Ziyuan, and the others had no choice but to take the unconscious people and follow Qianshan Jinwu to the city. Duanmu Yulong saw that the situation wasn't good. He frowned and thought for a while. Qianshan Jinwu had already seized the initiative. He appeared very strong and suppressed his aura. Therefore, he said to the contestants with a serious expression, "The situation in the city is complicated and urgent. We have to split up to save time. I'm going to the area on the left to investigate. Who wants to go with me?" The contestants immediately understood that Duanmu Yulong wanted to split up with Qianshan Jinwu to establish his authority. If they didn't go with him, they would be suppressed and ordered by Qianshan Jinwu. Compared to Qianshan Jinwu's domineering and cold attitude, the princes were more inclined to follow Duanmu Yulong. Therefore, Lu Zikong, Yi Yifan, and Lu Ziyuan immediately expressed their opinions. "Brother Duanmu, we're willing to go with you. I'll go with you too." Di Jianqing from the sword faction and Yu Zhengfei in armor didn't choose to follow Duanmu Yulong or stay with Qianshan Jinwu. Both of them wanted to go into the city alone to investigate. They casually found an excuse, bowed to the crowd, and left. Ji Tianqing didn't even bother to find an excuse. He left silently and wanted to go alone. He quickly passed through the ruins and streets and rushed to the east of the city. There were only 2 contestants left. They were carrying a few unconscious people. They awkwardly stayed where they were and could only follow Qianshan Jinwu. Just like that, The 10 contestants were divided into 5 groups before they had even investigated the cause of the disaster. They went their separate ways in the city. On the square at the foot of heaven-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people saw this scene through the screen. Everyone realized that the relationship between the 10 contestants was a little subtle, and they immediately began to discuss in whispers. The battle for the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord position is indeed a battle between Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. Although Duanmu Yulong is the prince of an aristocratic family and has a noble status, he is still too young. I'm afraid he is no match for Qianshan Jinwu. After all, Qianshan Jinwu has been the city lord for many years. He is very powerful, decisive, and overbearing. His aura is much stronger than Duanmu Yulong's. When Duanmu Yulong wanted to split up, I thought that the 10 prodigies were going to split into 2 factions. I didn't expect Di Jianqing and Yu Zhengfei to be so confident and want to act alone. Only the weak will act together with the strong. Those who are confident will act alone. What's wrong with that Ji Tianqing? As the prince of an aristocratic family, how dare he not follow Duanmu Yulong and act alone? I think it must be because Ji Tianqing is too weak and no one wants to act with him, right? This is going to be awkward. Tens of thousands of people stared at the screen as they watched and discussed. They were all looking forward to a good show. Ji Ku, Yan and the rest stared at Ji Tianqing's figure in the screen, silently cheering for him in their hearts. After Ji Tianqing left the group of contestants, he rushed toward the East City. As soon as he entered a street, he saw many people running away or looking for something in the ruins on both sides of the street. There was a middle-aged couple in plain clothes digging desperately in the ruins. Their faces were filled with anxiety and worry, and their eyes were filled with tears. The 2 of them dug with their bare hands. Even though their hands were bleeding, they didn't feel any pain. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing flew over in a flash and landed beside the couple. "Brother, what are you looking for?" He thought that the couple would be reluctant to part with their family's treasures. However, the middle-aged woman looked at him and cried with a face full of pain and anxiety. "The house has collapsed, but my poor child is still buried inside." The middle-aged man's face also darkened. As he dug, he explained, "We were busy outside the house. Who would have thought that the damn devil would suddenly appear and start a massacre in the city? Half of the city has been destroyed. Our house has collapsed, but our child is still buried. Young master, can you help us?" "Devil? Start a massacre in the city?" Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something, but he didn't ask. The most important thing now was to save the child. He released his soul sense to cover the ruins in front of him and immediately found that a little girl in a floral cotton-padded jacket was curled up in the depths of the ruins. The little girl with pigtails was about 6 or 7 years old and looked very cute. However, she had been injured by the rubble, and there were bloodstains on her head and legs. She had already fainted. "Step back and let me do it." While speaking, Ji Tianqing slowly stretched out his right palm and manipulated the powerful earth power to surge into the ruins. Immediately, the mountainous pile of rubble automatically separated into 2 sides. In the blink of an eye, the 4-meter-high ruins were divided into 2 halves, and a wide passage appeared. At the end of the passage was the depths of the ruins. The little girl was curled up on the ground, and the rubble around her had already been removed. Ji Tianqing reached out and grabbed at the air, saving the little girl. He held the little girl in his arms and injected the green wood genuine essence into the little girl's body. In the blink of an eye, the green wood genuine essence, which contained rich vitality, healed her wounds and woke her up. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged couple was shocked, as if they had seen a miracle. After they came to their senses, they immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing with tears in their eyes. "Young master." "Oh no, benefactor, thank you so much." Benefactor's means are just like that of an immortal. "We will never forget your great kindness. We are willing to do anything to repay you." Ji Tianqing raised his right hand and helped the couple up with an invisible force. He handed the little girl to the middle-aged woman and said in a kind tone, "It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Can the 2 of you please tell me in detail what exactly happened in the city before this?" Chapter 583. The middle-aged couple was very grateful to Ji Tianqing. When they heard his inquiry, they naturally told him the truth. The little girl was already awake and crying in fear. The middle-aged woman was busy coaxing her daughter, and the middle-aged man explained to Ji Tianqing, Benefactor, just this morning, a golden light suddenly flew from the sky and arrived outside the city gate. The golden light turned into a 100-meter-tall giant. It was as powerful as a god. With a wave of its hand, it smashed the city wall and smashed the entire street. It was an out-and-out devil. It wantonly destroyed the houses and buildings in the city and killed countless people. At this time, the middle-aged woman frowned and whispered, "That's not a devil. It's clearly the dueling god. It's the guardian of the giant holy city." The middle-aged man glared at her and said with righteous indignation, "What guardian? If it's really the guardian, why did it start a massacre in the city and almost killed our daughter?" Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned and asked doubtfully, "The dueling god? It's the guardian of the giant holy city? What's going on?" The middle-aged man sighed and said in a low voice, "For hundreds of years, the people of the giant holy city have piously believed in the dueling god. It's said that the giant holy city was just a small town 300 years ago. It was surrounded by dangerous mountains and rivers, and countless demons and ghosts were entrenched there. Those demons and ghosts often came to the town to catch people and eat them. Every year, they also asked the people to offer virgin boys and girls as sacrifices. Later, a golden giant came to the town and sympathized with the sufferings of the people. So he wiped out those demons and ghosts. Since then, the town was safe and peaceful, and no demons and ghosts came to harass us. After a few decades, the population of the town increased, and it became a city, named the Giant Holy City. The people of the city were grateful for the protection of the dueling god, so they built a temple and worshipped the dueling god with incense. This custom continued for hundreds of years. I never believed in these things, but my wife has always believed in the dueling god. Every month, she goes to the temple to worship incense." Speaking up to here, the middle-aged man's face was full of anger, and he said in a low voice, "I don't know why, but that dueling Shin hasn't appeared in the world for over 200 years. This time, he suddenly started a massacre and almost destroyed half of the city. Gods and protectors? What was the difference between them and those demons and ghosts? Aren't they still harming the common people and treating our lives like grass?" The middle-aged woman quickly shook her head and explained in a low voice, "It's not like that. There must be a reason for the dueling god to be angry. He wouldn't kill for no reason. Everyone is talking about it. It must be because the giant miracle god hasn't appeared in the world for more than 200 years, and the people don't believe in him devoutly. The incense in the temple is not strong, and this angered the giant miracle god." After saying that, she glanced at her husband and grumbled, "It's because many of the citizens in the city are like you. They don't believe in the giant miracle god and aren't grateful for its protection. That's why the gods have punished them. Nonsense." The middle-aged man glared at his wife and growled with a serious expression. The middle-aged woman suddenly shut up and concentrated on coaxing the child. Ji Tianqing asked a few more questions, but the middle-aged man didn't know the details and couldn't answer him. Seeing that the couple didn't have a deep understanding of the giant miracle god, Ji Tianqing couldn't get any more clues and had to give up. After he turned and left, he flapped his golden wings and flew into the sky. He looked down at the situation in the city. He saw that the East City District and the South City District of the giant miracle god city were basically destroyed into ruins. Countless streets and alleys and hundreds of thousands of houses and buildings were turned into ruins. In the ruins, countless corpses of the common people were buried. At least tens of thousands of common people were still searching for their relatives in the ruins, or digging for their property and money. The remaining hundreds of thousands of common people had already fled the two ruined areas and poured into the West City District and the North City District like a tide. In the square in the center of the giant miracle god city, thousands of common people gathered. They were all poor homeless people, and most of them were injured. Around the huge city lord's mansion, it was also crowded with people who suffered. They were shouting like a flash flood, asking the city lord's mansion to come forward to solve the disaster. But the city lord's mansion's gate was closed, and hundreds of guards were guarding the courtyard walls, waiting for the common people to enter. The giant miracle god city suffered such a disaster, and the city lord's mansion was helpless. Moreover, the devil who destroyed the houses and buildings and caused the deaths of countless common people was actually the guardian god that the common people had believed in for hundreds of years. Now the common people in the city were complaining everywhere, and the public was excited, but their opinions were not unified. Ji Tianqing listened attentively for a while and heard several voices. Many people thought that this disaster was the wrath of the giant miracle god and the punishment for the disrespectful. They wanted to atone for their sins to the giant miracle god and prove their devout belief in the giant miracle god. Another part of the people felt that the giant miracle god was so cruel and evil that it was not a guardian god at all. It was no different from a demon or a ghost. These people hoped that the city lord's mansion would find a way to get rid of the evil giant miracle god, even if the price was high. And more common people were eager to be rescued, search for missing relatives, and rebuild destroyed houses and homes. In short, the entire giant miracle god city was in a mess, and no one could solve it. After figuring out the situation in the city, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to fly over the square in the city. In the face of a disaster, it is more important to save the dying and heal the wounded than to deal with the giant miracle god. He murmured silently in his heart, and then waved his hand to release thousands of colorful spirit lights, which scattered on the edge of the square. After a while, he placed hundreds of spirit stones around the square and arranged the foundation of a Tianyuan array. Then, he displayed his unfathomable array attainments and began to arrange the Greenwood Life Accumulation Array. After this Tianyuan array was set up, it could gather the wood spirit qi within a radius of hundreds of miles and form a steady stream of greenwood vitality. The greenwood vitality was a pure life force, which could not only heal the injuries of the tens of thousands of common people, but also replenish their life and physical strength. The wounded gathered in the square were all ordinary people. If no one took care of and provided for them, they would soon die in pain, hunger, and cold. When Ji Tianqing set up the Grand Heavenly Essence formation, he also fused the Wood Emperor's umbrella into the formation. The Wood Emperor umbrella was also a secret technique that used the Greenwood Spirit Qi to heal the wounded. When used together with the Greenwood Life Accumulation Array, it would definitely have a miraculous effect. The tens of thousands of wounded people in the square looked up at Ji Tianqing in the sky. They were shocked and puzzled, and they all discussed with fear. No one had seen him before, so they didn't know whether he was good or evil, let alone what he wanted to do. However, 2 hours later, when Ji Tianqing finished setting up the Greenwood Life Nurturing Grand Formation, everyone was shocked and understood his intentions. A green light barrier with a radius of 1,000 meters appeared. It was like a green umbrella that covered the sky, covering the entire plaza. The big green umbrella bloomed with a dazzling green light, sprinkling down thousands of green silk ribbons, which fell on the wounded people like a continuous drizzle. The endless green silk ribbons, which contained the pure and majestic greenwood vitality, entered the bodies of the wounded people and quickly healed their injuries. Everyone could feel that under the baptism of the green silk ribbons, not only were their injuries quickly healed, but even their weak bodies were gradually recovering their physical strength. The wounded people who were on the verge of death also had their lives saved. Chapter 584. The tens of thousands of people might have seen doctors with superb medical skills, but they had never seen a miracle-working doctor like Ji Tianqing, who had the means to create miracles. No matter how powerful an ordinary medical expert was, he could only treat the patients one by one. Ji Tianqing directly set up a Tianyuan array and healed tens of thousands of injured people at the same time with the help of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. What kind of magical means was that? Ji Tianqing's image at the moment, in the eyes of tens of thousands of people, was really like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Tens of thousands of people were grateful to him, grateful and worshipping him to the extreme. For the first time, Ji Tianqing used the Wooden Emperor umbrella and the Greenwood Life-Generating Array together. Seeing the remarkable effect of this method, the tens of thousands of injured people were grateful to him, and he also felt gratified. So, he said in a loud voice, "Those who are in pain and have no medical treatment can come to the square in the city. This array can save the dying and heal the injured. It can treat everyone's injuries and relieve their pain." His voice was like rolling thunder, spreading over an area with a radius of dozens of miles. More than half of the people in Giant Holy City could hear his voice. Suddenly, the injured people in the East City and the South City, who had no medical treatment, were full of excitement and surprise, and hurried to the square in the city. Several talents who were investigating the cause of the accident in the city certainly heard Ji Tianqing's voice. When they flew into the sky and saw the scene in the square in the city, they were shocked. No one expected that Ji Tianqing, who seemed to be the weakest and most inconspicuous, could do such an incredible feat. Although with the means of Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong, they might also be able to do what Ji Tianqing did. But they were busy with other things and didn't think of this method at all, nor did they think of treating the injured people. At this moment, Qianshan Jinwu was talking with the giant holy city lord in the city lord's mansion with two candidates. Qianshan Jinwu's posture was very tough and overbearing. He ordered the giant holy city lord to open the government office and send guards and city guards to rescue and protect the people in the city, clean up the ruins in time, and deal with the aftermath. However, the giant holy city lord didn't know him at all. How could he listen to the orders of a stranger? Not only did the giant spirit city lord scold Qianshan Jinwu, but he also ordered the guards to drive him out of the city lord's mansion. The result was obvious. Qianshan Jinwu ruthlessly and decisively stabbed the giant spirit city lord to death. Those guards who wanted to protect the city lord were also killed by him in seconds. Suddenly, Qianshan Jinwu shocked everyone with his ruthless methods. He successfully obtained the city lord's golden seal and took control of the city lord's mansion. He sat in the city lord's mansion and issued a series of orders in the name of the giant spirit city lord. Qianshan Jinwu had been in charge of Smoke Wing City for many years. He was very experienced in dispatching troops, managing cities, and dealing with emergencies. Under his command, the city lord's manor first issued the city lord's order to calm the people down. Then, the hundreds of guards and thousands of city guards of the city lord's mansion were all mobilized to search and rescue in the city and deal with the aftermath. On the other side, Duanmu Yulong was investigating the South City ruins. When he learned of Qianshan Jinwu's actions and saw Ji Tianqing's wood emperor umbrella, his face turned green with anger. Qianshan Jinwu was used to being the city lord, and his methods were very tough. He was not surprised that he could make such a decision. However, not only did Qianshan Jinwu's performance was very outstanding, but even Ji Tianqing, who seemed to be the weakest guy, made such a magnificent feat and won the worship of thousands of people. Duanmu Yulong was completely defeated by the two. He seemed to have done nothing. How could he not be angry? In this awkward situation, Lu Zikong, Yi Yifan, and Lu Ziyuan were a little anxious. They all gave advice to Duanmu Yulong. Brother Duanmu, Qianshan Jinwu, and Ji Tianqing have made a dazzling performance. We have to do something. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a loss of face for us? Brother Duanmu, Qianshan Jinwu seized the city lord's mansion and issued orders in the name of the city lord. Ji Tianqing also set up a large array to save thousands of people. We have to think of a way to make some contributions. I have a treasure here called the Thick Earth Ruler. It can mobilize the power of the earth element in a radius of dozens of miles. Whether it's cutting a mountain or paving a road, it can be done with a flip of the palm. Brother Duanmu, perhaps we can use this to make some contributions. Hearing Lu Ziyuan's words, Duanmu Yulong immediately understood his meaning. Very good. Then many thanks, Brother Lu. Let's borrow the power of the Thick Earth Ruler and join hands to cast a spell to clean up these ruins. It will also be a great contribution. After making up their minds, Duanmu Yulong and the other three joined hands to cast a spell to clean up the ruins. Lu Ziyuan, Yi Yifan, and Lu Zikong scattered around the ruins. They used a secret technique to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to assist Duanmu Yulong. Duanmu Yulong stood in the sky above the ruins of the southern city. He held the golden thick earth ruler and waved it towards the ruins below. Suddenly, countless rays of dark yellow light poured into the ruins and quickly melted the earth and rocks, smoothing out the ravines and holes on the ground. With the passage of time, the ruins of the southern city disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The devastated earth also quickly returned to normal. In the process of cleaning up the ruins, the four also rescued many people who were buried in the ruins. Those rescued people were naturally grateful to the four of them. At the same time, Di Jianqing and Yu Zhengfei were also doing different things. After Di Jianqing inquired about the news of the mighty miracle god, he flew on his sword and left the giant miracle city. He rushed to the temple outside the city to investigate the clues. Yu Zhengfei used a special method and his own powerful commanding ability to gather more than 1,000 martial artists to rescue the people in the city and repair the roads. Although the strength of the more than 1,000 martial artists was very ordinary, there were many people. However, there was strength in numbers. Under Yu Zhengfei's leadership and command, the cultivators also made great contributions to the battle. The 10 contestants all displayed their strengths and used different methods to quickly save the people of the giant miracle city and clean up the ruins in the city. It seemed that at most one more day, the giant miracle city would be stabilized. But at this time, in the sky south of the giant miracle city, a dazzling golden light that blotted out the sky flew over. That dazzling golden light flew above the southern city gate of the giant miracle city and stopped in midair. Swoosh! With a flash of brilliance, it condensed into a golden giant with a height of 100 meters. The giant's body was extremely sturdy, like a violent bear. Its arms were extremely long, almost hanging to the side of its feet. Its palms were also very wide, as if they contained the power to destroy the world. The most unique thing was that in the center of its forehead, there was a golden triangular eye. Its eyes were constantly flashing with electric arcs, as if there were blue thunderbolts jumping and surging. When the tens of thousands of citizens in the city saw the golden giant in the sky, they immediately let out terrified screams and cries of despair. Chapter 585. Although the powerful and violent Cyclops was just standing in the sky overlooking the city below, the entire city was filled with fear. However, the citizens of the city were extremely afraid of it. They were all scared out of their wits. Whether it was the ordinary people, the city guards, or the guards of the city lord's mansion, they all turned around and fled desperately. Countless people screamed in fear and despair. Juling Shun. It's the Juling Shun. That demon is back. Everyone run. It's over. The entire city is going to be destroyed. Everyone is going to die. You guys who are not devout believers, why don't you kneel down and beg for forgiveness from the Juling Shun? The Juling Shun has appeared again. It must be to test our sincerity. Everyone quickly worship the Juling Shun. It won't punish us anymore. Although most of the people were fleeing in panic. However, there were still many devout believers of the Juling Shun who were kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to the Juling Shun in the sky. These people looked very devout. They were even praying for the Juling Shun's forgiveness. However, after the Juling Shun observed for a moment, it flew to the sky above the West City District. It opened its golden eye and looked down at the buildings and streets below. It opened its huge mouth and let out a dull roar. Then, it waved its pair of wide and huge palms and shot 2 balls of golden light at the towering city wall below. Bang! Bang! In the deafening noise, the 2 balls of golden light hit the thick city wall that was hundreds of meters high. 2 huge holes were blasted in the city wall on the spot. Dense cracks appeared on the city wall, and gravel and dust splashed all over the sky. Half of the wide and huge city gate was also blown down. The huge gravel that fell down filled the moat. The Juling Shun opened its golden eye again and released a bolt of lightning that was as thick as a bucket. It blasted on a straight and wide street. With a loud bang, the 1,000-meter-long bluestone street was suddenly blown to pieces. A huge pit with a radius of hundreds of meters was blasted out on the ground, and spiderweb-like gullies appeared around it. The blue electric light splashed out and swept across a radius of 2 kilometers like a tide. The houses and buildings on both sides of the street were immediately struck by the lightning and violent airwaves. More than half of them collapsed on the spot. Thousands of people who were still hiding in their homes and trembling were killed on the spot by the aftermath of the lightning. Even those who were lucky enough to survive were buried in the ruins, unable to escape. After destroying the main street, Juling Shun opened his single eye and stared at the ruins, silently observing them. A moment later, it waved its palm and shot out a ball of golden light, blasting the houses that had not completely collapsed into pieces. As a result, the area within a radius of 2,000 meters was truly reduced to scorched earth and ruins. Such a terrifying power caused the earth to tremble violently. Half of the giant spirit city was shaking. The hundreds of thousands of commoners in the city were all frightened to the point of insanity. Juling Shun ignored the frantically fleeing commoners in the city. His single eye released an invisible spiritual sense, enveloping the ruined area and probing it bit by bit. At this moment, several dazzling lights lit up in the giant spirit city. They flew into the sky like streamers and rushed toward the giant spirit god. Shwa! 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 In the blink of an eye, 9 extraordinary figures appeared in front of the giant spirit god. These 9 powerful and imposing young powerhouses were Ji Tianqing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others. Qianshan Jinwu stood in the front and was the closest to the giant spirit god. He was wearing a black cloak and holding a golden heavy sword, exuding a cold, murderous aura. Duanmu Yulong was not to be outdone. He stood side by side with Qianshan Jinwu, holding a sword and confronting the giant spirit god. Yu Zhengfei, wearing a dragon-patterned armor and holding a coiling dragon spear, stood in the sky beside the giant spirit god. His whole body was surrounded by blood-red clouds, bursting out with soaring fighting spirit. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky on the right side of the giant spirit god. He was wearing a Kenshin battle robe and holding the black dragon sword. He was as mighty and extraordinary as a Kenshin descending to the world. At this moment, among the 10 participants, except for Di Jianqing, who was still outside the city, the other 9 had gathered to face the giant spirit god together. The giant spirit god seemed to feel the threat. He no longer stared at the city below, but sized up the 9 geniuses in the sky with his golden eye. He opened his mouth and let out a few angry roars, as if he was scolding everyone, but also as if he was angrily complaining about something. Unfortunately, no one could understand his giant language. Qianshan Jinwu stared at the giant spirit god indifferently and shouted with a murderous aura, "Giant spirit god! You are the guardian of the giant spirit god city in vain. How dare you slaughter your devout believers? You are no different from a demon. I will kill you today to get rid of evil for the people and for Tianqing." As soon as he finished speaking, Qianshan Jinwu clenched the heavy sword in his hand and was about to unleash his full power to perform a killer move. However, Duanmu Yulong was determined to steal his limelight. Before he could attack, Duanmu Yulong charged at the giant spirit god like lightning and slashed out 3 huge sword lights that could split heaven and earth. Prepare to die, demon. Everyone must remember that Duanmu Yulong is the one who slays demons and protects the people. As his angry roar resounded, 3 dazzling golden sword lights that were 10 feet long instantly shrouded the giant spirit god's figure. The 3 sword lights were about to hit the giant spirit god. However, the giant spirit god's body emitted a dazzling golden light. His figure flashed and teleported thousands of meters away, easily dodging the 3 sword lights. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, the giant spirit god teleported thousands of meters away and appeared beside Duanmu Yulong. He had already raised his wide left palm and slapped at Duanmu Yulong. Shit! Duanmu Yulong knew that something was wrong and was immediately on alert. However, before he could dodge or escape, he was hit by the giant golden palm and was sent flying back. Whoosh! Duanmu Yulong was like a sharp arrow that pierced through the sky and flew thousands of meters away before crashing into a palace. The incomparably powerful impact caused half of the palace to collapse, causing debris and dust to fly all over the sky. When Duanmu Yulong crawled out of the ruins, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper, and he looked extremely miserable. Just a moment ago, he had confidently attacked the giant spirit god and shouted those confident and arrogant words. At this moment, he was sent flying by the giant spirit god's slap. He looked miserable and had suffered serious injuries. This was too humiliating and too ironic. Duanmu Yulong flew out of the ruins and quickly suppressed his injuries. He no longer dared to attack recklessly. Qianshan Jinwu and the other elites were shocked when they saw Duanmu Yulong being sent flying by the giant spirit god's slap. They couldn't believe it. Oh my god! The giant spirit god is so powerful? Duanmu Yulong, who is at Sky Origin Stage Level 6, couldn't even dodge the giant spirit god's slap. How powerful is the giant spirit god? Chapter 586. The slap of the Julingshan shocked everyone. All the elites realized that the Julingshan was too powerful, and they could not underestimate him. Ji Tianqing looked at Julingshan with a solemn expression. He silently speculated in his heart, what realm has this Julingshan reached? Is he in the soul refining stage? But he is still using spiritual sense, not the mysterious and invisible power of the divine soul. He should not have reached the soul refining stage, but the Tianyuan stage. But he could easily slap Duanmu Yulong away. He must have reached LV9 of the Tianyuan stage, or even half a step into the soul refining stage. At this time, Qianshan Jinwu shouted coldly, "Everyone, the Julingshan is at least half a step into the soul refining stage. It is really difficult to deal with him. We can't underestimate him, but we can't retreat in fear. We have to work together to defeat him and protect the people of the Julingshan city. Even though Qianshan Jinwu was the strongest at LV7 of the Tianyuan stage, he could only work together to defeat the Julingshan. He did not dare to say that he could kill the Julingshan. When he finished his words, he took the lead to attack. He waved his golden sword and rushed to the Julingshan. Fiery Five Dragons Slash. Qianshan Jinwu used all his strength and slashed out 500-meter-long fiery dragons toward the Julingshan. The 5 fiery dragons cut through the sky and covered the Julingshan with the power to destroy the world. Suddenly, the area within a radius of 10 miles was covered by fire. The air became extremely hot. Qianshan Jinwu's killing move was enough to flatten a mountain. It was powerful enough to threaten the Julingshan. The Julingshan saw that he could not escape. He roared and his body shone with dazzling golden light. It condensed into a huge shield to protect himself. It even waved its pair of gigantic palms and ruthlessly shot out a few golden balls of light towards the 5 Inferno Divine Dragons. Bang, bang, bang. The huge golden light balls collided with the fiery dragons. There was a deafening muffled sound. Golden light and flames burst forth, turning into a violent and blazing shockwave that spread out in all directions. The city walls and ruins below were also shattered by the blast wave, stirring up smoke and fog. 3 of the 5 Inferno Divine Dragons were shattered on the spot. The remaining 2 struck the mighty miracle god, but were blocked by its shield. Julingshan's shield was indestructible. It actually shattered the 2 Flame Divine Dragons, and there wasn't a single crack. Of course, Julingshan was also sent flying by the violent and peerless force, crashing into the ruins of the city wall thousands of meters away. At the same time, Ji Tianqing and the other Sky Prides launched their attacks. Everyone unleashed their powerful killer moves, besieging Julingshan from all directions. Flying Emperor Consecutive Slash. Qingyan Domineering Saber. 10 Ultimate Berserker Spear. Star Attraction Technique. The Heavenly Prides displayed their strengths and unleashed an overwhelming amount of sword shadows and saber lights. Ji Tianqing also brazenly drew his sword and slashed out an ice-blue divine dragon, ruthlessly attacking Julingshan. 9 Heaven's Dragon Soars. The 30-meter-long ice-blue divine dragon slammed into the Juling god with a force that could destroy everything. Suddenly, the sky within a radius of 10 miles was filled with colorful true essence brilliance. The dazzling spiritual light in the sky erupted with a violent and raging force, forming a wave of shock waves that rippled out in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The loud noises were incessant, reverberating fiercely in the sky above Juling City. The earth-shattering power scared the hundreds of thousands of people in the city. They desperately retreated into the distance for fear of being affected by this battle. Julingshan endured the joint attacks of everyone and was beaten back repeatedly, constantly letting out angry roars. The golden light shield condensed around its body was constantly trembling under the attacks of the sword shadows and saber lights, and countless cracks appeared on it. Finally, Julingshan was completely enraged, roaring repeatedly and entering a berserk state. Relying on its powerful defense, Julingshan ignored the sword shadows and saber lights in the sky and rushed toward one of the Sky Prides as fast as lightning, waving its giant palm fiercely. Boom! In the muffled sound, the Crown Prince Yi Yifan was sent flying by Julingshan's palm, spitting out blood as he flew backward. Lu Ziyuan and Lu Zikong hurriedly slashed out huge sword and saber lights to save Yi Yifan, but it was too late. The extremely violent Julingshan waved a pair of giant palms to shatter the sword and saber lights, and pounced toward the 2 of them. Lu Ziyuan and Lu Zikong were frightened and immediately retreated, not daring to tangle with Julingshan. However, they were too slow to dodge Julingshan's attack. Boom! Another muffled sound burst out, and Lu Zikong was also sent flying by Julingshan's slap, smashing into the ruins 1,000 meters away with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. Then, Lu Ziyuan was not spared either. After being caught by Julingshan, Julingshan grabbed him in its giant palm and slammed him to the ground below. The ground that was full of ruins was suddenly smashed into a 100-meter-wide deep pit. Lu Ziyuan was lying in the big pit, covered with wounds all over his body. Dark red blood kept gushing out, and it was obvious that he was seriously injured. In the blink of an eye, Julingshan had injured 3 emperors consecutively. The other elites witnessed this scene with their own eyes, and they were all stunned. Deep fear and doubt arose in their hearts. This Juling Shen is actually so powerful? It's over. None of us is its match. How can we defeat it? How can we resolve the crisis of Juling Shen? This is not the way to go. If we continue fighting for a while, we will be seriously injured by Juling Shen. Why would the imperial court arrange such a test for us? We are no match for Juling Shen at all. Next, Juling Shen was like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep, valiantly charging forward and chasing after the elites. It charged forward unscrupulously, and constantly sent one elite after another flying. Juling Shen rampaged in the sky, and no one could stop it at all. At this time, Ji Tianqing took advantage of the fact that Juling Shen was chasing after one of the elites to use his trump card. Sword of Judgment. He released the sword embryo in his body, which turned into a huge golden sword that was 30 meters long. The dazzling golden flames seemed to have added a pair of wings to the huge sword. The Sword of Judgment carried the power to pierce through everything and charged toward Juling Shen. Boom! In the deafening loud noise, the Sword of Judgment ruthlessly stabbed Juling Shen's back. Suddenly, Juling Shen's golden light shield was penetrated, and a huge bloody hole was left on his back, with golden blood splattering out. That wound was not fatal, and the injury was relatively light. However, everyone had been fighting with Juling Shen for so long, and this was the first time Juling Shen had been injured. Seeing this scene, the elites were stunned, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Juling Shen immediately abandoned his target and turned to look at Ji Tianqing, letting out a furious roar. In its fury, it opened its golden eye without hesitation and released a bolt of blue lightning. Kaboom! Chapter 587. No one doubted that the power of the blue lightning released by the mighty miracle god was absolutely terrifying. Even a 1,000-foot mountain would crumble instantly under the violent lightning, turning into ruins and dust. Of the 9 prodigies present, no matter who was struck by the blue lightning, they would either die or be severely injured. When the crowd saw the blue lightning bolts heading towards Ji Tianqing, they stared at him with wide eyes to see if he could escape this calamity. Ji Tianqing's aura was locked on by the blue lightning, and there was nowhere to hide. No matter where he ran, he would definitely be hit by the blue lightning. Moreover, his speed of escape was definitely not comparable to the speed of the lightning. At this critical moment, he was still calm and did not panic. Wings of the Golden Rock. He did not hesitate to close his wings to protect himself. In the next moment, the destructive blue lightning bolts struck him fiercely. Kaboom! A deafening sound burst out, shaking the sky and shaking the earth for dozens of miles. The lightning beam hit the golden wings and sent Ji Tianqing flying back, crashing into the broken city wall 1,000 meters away. The broken city wall that had not collapsed was smashed into pieces, sending smoke and dust into the air. The lightning beam also collapsed, turning into thousands of blue lightning arcs that spread in all directions, immediately covering the sky for a radius of 10 miles. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others had not yet recovered from the shock, and they did not know whether Ji Tianqing was dead or alive when they were enveloped by the overwhelming lightning arcs. Amidst the crackling sounds of thunder, several prodigies were struck by lightning, their faces black and their heads black. They fled in all directions. Even though everyone's martial arts were profound and they were able to block the bombardment of the lightning and were not injured, they still looked very miserable. At this moment, Ji Tianqing emerged from the rubble and flew back into the sky unscathed. Seeing this scene, the geniuses were even more shocked, and their expressions became more and more interesting. Ji Tianqing, who was struck by the blue lightning, was fine, but they were very miserable. This was simply unbelievable. Duanmu Yulong and the others were both shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. In their hearts, they were faintly ashamed and resentful. However, Juling Shen roared and rushed over again, waving his giant palm at the prodigies. Everyone hurriedly dealt with Juling Shen, joining forces to launch a siege. At this point, apart from Ji Tianqing, the other 8 heavenly legends had all suffered injuries of varying degrees. Everyone no longer fought with Juling Shen head-on. Instead, they chose to use a roundabout tactic to constantly restrain and harass him. Although Juling Shen was strong, he was no match for the 9 prodigies. After 100 breaths of time, the battle gradually stabilized. Ji Tianqing and the other 8 prodigies circled around Juling Shen in the sky and finally managed to tie him down. The Julingshan continued to charge and unleash all sorts of destructive moves. However, he was unable to kill any of the prodigies. All he did was cause everyone's injuries to worsen. However, as its strength continued to weaken, more and more wounds appeared on its body, and its injuries became more and more serious. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, everyone fought from the sky above the giant holy city to the sky above the wilderness outside the city. Julingshan seemed to have lost his patience, and also had thoughts of retreating. He found an opportunity to use both of his palms to send 2 prodigies flying. A gap suddenly appeared in the encirclement formed by the 9 prodigies. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Julingshan turned into a golden stream of light and flew out through the gap. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest immediately launched a pursuit, wanting to kill Julingshan in one go. However, Julingshan's speed was too fast. In the blink of an eye, he left everyone far behind and disappeared into the horizon. Everyone chased for a while. Seeing that Julingshan had disappeared without a trace, they could only stop helplessly. Qianshan Jinwu said in a dignified tone, "Julingshan has escaped far away. We can't catch up. Everyone is injured. Let's return to the city to recuperate first." Duanmu Yulong furrowed his brows tightly. His eyes were fixed on the distant horizon. Filled with unwillingness, he shouted in a low voice, "That damned Julingshan, it actually escaped. This time, he caught us off guard. If he dares to attack again, he will not be able to return." Subsequently, all the prodigies returned to Giant Holy City. The hundreds of thousands of people in the city had been in fear and despair. Everyone thought that Julingshan was going to destroy the entire city. They had nowhere to run and would definitely die in this disaster. In particular, the scene of the 9 prodigies fighting with Julingshan made the people see how powerful and invincible Julingshan was. Many people had the idea of abandoning the city and escaping, even if they had to give up their homes, just to save their lives. However, when the people saw the 9 prodigies return to Giant Holy City, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief and revealed a grateful expression of surviving a disaster. Duanmu Yulong knew that Qianshan Jinwu would definitely announce the result to appease the people in the city. Therefore, he took the initiative to strike first. He flew above the square in the city and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, don't worry. The evil Julingshan has been repelled by us. Julingshan is seriously injured and will not dare to attack again in the short term. Everyone stay in the city at ease, heal your injuries, and rebuild your homes. We will soon completely eliminate Julingshan." When the people in the city heard Duanmu Yulong's words, they cheered as if relieved of a heavy burden and bowed to the 9 prodigies in the sky. In the eyes of many people, these 9 prodigies were the great heroes who had saved Giant Holy City, the saviors of the world. Duanmu Yulong, who had spoken, was naturally regarded as the leader of the prodigies and was deeply grateful to him. Duanmu Yulong enjoyed the worship of the people and listened to the cheers of the people in the city, revealing a satisfied smile. Qianshan Jinwu's eyes were a little gloomy. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and his fists secretly clenched in his sleeves. But now that things had come to this, he couldn't say anything more. He could only fly back to the city lord's mansion with the other 2 prodigies to heal their injuries. Duanmu Yulong and the other prodigies also landed in the city to heal their injuries and restore their vitality. Compared to the 8 prodigies who were in a sorry state, Ji Tianqing was not injured and did not consume much of his true essence, so he did not need to rest. He landed on the square in the city and continued to reinforce the Greenwood Life Nurturing Array, enhance the power of the Wood Emperor umbrella, and heal the injuries of the people. Nearly 10,000 people gathered in the square were very respectful and worshipped him as if he was a god. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing communicated with the people and inquired about Julingshan from them. As long as it was related to Julingshan, even if it was a legend from 100 or 200 years ago, he would not miss it. This was because he found that Julingshan's behavior was a little strange. There must be something fishy about it. When Julingshan invaded Giant Holy City, he did not wantonly slaughter the people and only destroyed the buildings. Chapter 588. Since Ji Tianqing came to Giant Holy City, he had been silently observing the situation. He was not famous, and his status was not as good as the other geniuses. Moreover, he did not want to be in the limelight like Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong to win the respect and awe of everyone. The other geniuses did not pay much attention to him, treating him as a dispensable existence. Therefore, he rarely took the initiative to say anything, but secretly observed the situation and carefully investigated the clues. When the giant Holy Spirit God attacked, he carefully observed the behavior of the giant Holy Spirit God and came to this conclusion. With the strength of our contestants, it is impossible to defeat the giant Holy Spirit God, let alone kill it. If we want to resolve the crisis of giant Holy City and save the people in the city, we must not rely on force and fighting. We must think of other ways. This was the conclusion of Ji Tianqing's careful analysis. Because of this, he decided to investigate the clues in depth and learn more about the giant Holy Spirit God. Many people were very grateful and respectful to him. Of course, they would answer all his questions and tell him everything they knew. Soon night fell. Ji Tianqing inquired about the news and clues from the injured people, especially the older people, who were his main subjects of inquiry. After all, the elders knew more legends and stories. Unknowingly, a night passed. After a night of inquiry and investigation, Ji Tianqing's understanding of the giant Holy Spirit God and giant Holy City had reached an extremely detailed level. After dawn, he left the giant Holy City alone and flew south as fast as lightning. According to the news he learned from the people, there was a majestic temple on Nightless Mountain, 100 miles south of giant Holy City, which was used to worship the giant Holy Spirit God. The temple was built 200 years ago. It took tens of thousands of people a few months to build it. It was very sacred and majestic. The believers of giant Holy City went to the temple on Nightless Mountain to worship the giant Holy Spirit God and offer incense every month. Ji Tianqing rushed to Nightless Mountain in the south to see if he could find any clues in the temple. Of course, in addition to the sacred and majestic temple, there was a smaller temple in the east of giant Holy City. That small temple was the earliest temple built by the people after the giant Holy City was built. It had a history of more than 100 years. In those 100 years, the temple became more and more ancient and dilapidated. After more than a dozen renovations, it finally could not bear the burden and became dilapidated. Moreover, the ancient temple was too small and could not accommodate the worship of the mighty miracle God. Therefore, the people of the giant Holy City abandoned the small temple and built a new golden temple on the Nightless Mountain in the south of the city. Now, most people only knew about the temple on Nightless Mountain. Very few people knew that in the depths of the mountains to the east of the city, there was a small temple that had been abandoned for nearly 200 years. Ji Tianqing flew above the wasteland and looked around, sizing up the surroundings. At the end of the dark brown wasteland was an undulating mountain range. Those mountain ranges were also dark brown in color. They looked extremely desolate and cold, without any green forests or vegetation. Ji Tianqing asked the old people in the city last night. About a few decades ago, the mountains around the giant Holy City were still dark green and covered with lush jungles. But in recent decades, the mountains around the giant Holy City had gradually changed, and the jungles and vegetation had become sparser. Even the countless fertile fields and agricultural lands outside the city could no longer grow crops. Often there was no harvest. Until 2 years ago, there was almost no greenery in those mountains, and the whole place had become a barren land. Ji Tianqing looked at the barren mountain in front of him and secretly thought, those people were right. The mountains outside the city are completely barren, and the former grassland has become a wasteland. It seems that there must be a problem with the heaven and earth aura around the giant Holy City. Just as he was thinking about this matter, a dazzling streamer suddenly appeared in the sky in front of him. The colorful streamer came from the depths of the barren mountain range and flew toward Ji Tianqing. It seemed to be going to the giant Holy City. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and stared at the streamer. After a while, he saw clearly that there was a figure in the streamer. It was a young man. When he got closer, he recognized that the man was Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was wearing a silver star-patterned robe and stepping on a 3-meter-long cloud scar ancient sword. His whole body was blooming with colorful spiritual light, and he flew across the sky. Compared with ordinary sky origin stage experts who condensed wings with genuine essence to fly in the sky, Ji Tianqing's posture was really like an immortal. When Ji Tianqing saw Ji Tianqing also saw him. Ji Tianqing took the initiative to fly toward him and stopped 100 meters in front of him. Prince Tianqing, how is the situation in the giant Holy City? Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and greeted him. Ji Tianqing also stopped in the sky and said calmly, "Last evening, the other 8 participants and I were helping the people in the city when the giant Holy Spirit suddenly attacked. The 9 of us joined forces to fight the giant Holy Spirit god and finally repelled him. However, everyone was seriously injured and is recuperating in the city. By the way, where did Brother Di go before? Did you go to the temple?" Ji Tianqing knew that Di Jianqing must be doing something when he did not appear for a night. At this time, Di Jianqing flew in from the south, so he guessed that Di Jianqing most likely went to the temple. Sure enough, Di Jianqing nodded with a smile and said in a gratified tone, "Yes, I did go to the temple to investigate the clues. Since the 9 of you joined forces and failed to defeat the giant Holy Spirit god, it seems that the clues I found are correct." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What clues did Brother Di find?" Di Jianqing showed a smile and said in a playful tone, "Well, I still have a few speculations that have not been confirmed. When I confirm the results, I will find a suitable time to announce it. By the way, you look like you are in a hurry. Are you also going to the temple to investigate the clues?" Ji Tianqing could see that Di Jianqing's words were an excuse. Obviously, he did not want to tell him the truth. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with Di Jianqing and said expressionlessly, "So what?" Di Jianqing said with a smile, "Then I'm afraid you have made a wasted trip. I have been busy in the temple all night and have already turned the temple inside out. As long as there are any valuable clues, they're all with me." Ji Tianqing frowned and glanced at him coldly. Di Jianqing ignored his reaction and said with a smile, "If Prince Tianqing is worried, you can go and investigate again. I still have something to do, so I will take my leave first." After saying that, Di Jianqing rode the Cloud Scar ancient sword and turned into a stream of light and flew toward the giant holy city. Chapter 589. Ji Tianqing did not doubt Di Jianqing's words. Di Jianqing had been busy all night. He must have turned over the temple of the Nightless Mountain. Even if he rushed over now, he would not be able to find any clues. In that case, he simply did not go to the Nightless Mountain. Instead, he went to the mountains east of the city to look for the abandoned small temple. Ji Tianqing knew that the small temple had been abandoned for 200 years. It was hard to say whether it existed, let alone find any clues. However, he had no better way and choice. He could only try his best. Swish! Ji Tianqing flew across the sky. His figure quickly disappeared into the sky and entered the mountains east of the city. He crossed over 9 mountain ranges and flew for 90 miles before stopping. According to the old man last night, the oldest temple is in the mountains 100 miles away from the giant holy city. It's exactly 100 miles away from the giant holy city. The abandoned small temple should be nearby. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky, looking down at the mountains and earth below. His eyes searched keenly. He saw that the surrounding mountains were dark brown. All he could see were brown soil and black rocks. The rising sun sprinkled golden sunlight and reflected in the mountains. It finally brought a little warmth to the cold and desolate mountains. Ji Tianqing looked around and searched the 9 mountain peaks, but he couldn't find a single divine temple. He couldn't even find a single house. That small temple has been abandoned for 200 years. Perhaps it has already become a ruin. With this thought in mind, he began to search even more carefully and checked again. But he still found nothing. Not only did he not find the temple building, but he also did not find a broken wall or a worn-out tile. This made him a little embarrassed. He immediately frowned. It shouldn't be. How can I not find any clues? Even if the temple has been abandoned for 200 years, there should at least be a few bricks and some broken tiles left, right? In the surrounding 9 mountains, I can't even find a brick or tile. This is very abnormal. Ji Tianqing whispered. After a moment of silent analysis, he concluded that there was a problem. Thus, he descended from the sky and landed on a 1,000 feet tall mountain. Since he couldn't see the bricks and tiles with his eyes, nor could he find the ruined temple that was abandoned 200 years ago, he used his telegnosis ability to investigate the situation. To a heaven origin stage cultivator, spiritual sense was more convenient than eyes. The eyes were only suitable for seeing things on the ground and in the sky, but the soul sense could penetrate the earth, water, and other obstacles. Normal cultivators at the 3rd level of sky origin stage could only reach 300 meters deep with their spiritual senses. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, had the Nirvana divine crystal in his mind. His spiritual sense was even more powerful, allowing him to probe up to 500 meters underground. He released his invisible spiritual sense and silently probed the situation on the mountain peak. Very soon, the soil, rock layers, and all kinds of messy things under the ground appeared clearly in his mind. His spiritual sense continued to extend underground, and it didn't take long for it to reach its limit, allowing him to explore the interior of the mountain. Unfortunately, the mountain peak under his feet was very ordinary, and he couldn't find anything related to the temple. Ji Tianqing excluded this mountain peak and flew to another mountain peak, continuing to explore with his spiritual sense. The second mountain also had no clues related to the temple. Next, he explored the third, the fourth, and the fifth mountain peaks. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing explored 6 mountains in a row, but still didn't find any clues. His spiritual sense had consumed a lot of energy, and his mind was a bit tired. He flew to the 7th mountain peak and released his spiritual sense to explore the underground. However, when his spiritual sense reached the underground, it immediately felt like it had fallen into a thick fog. His spiritual sense actually became blurry and hazy, and he couldn't see anything clearly. All he could see was a vast expanse of whiteness. This is the power of an array. There is an array on this mountain that can block my spiritual sense. Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up, and he immediately realized that there was something wrong with this mountain peak. So, he concentrated on controlling his spiritual sense to explore the invisible array bit by bit. After about 15 minutes, he found out that there was a heaven origin stage illusory array on this mountain peak. The illusory array could create illusions to cover the true appearance of the mountain peak, making this mountain as barren and unremarkable as the other mountain peaks. Humph, it actually used an illusory array to cover the true appearance of the mountain peak. It seems that this is the place I'm looking for. Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice, and then he used all his strength to perform his array skills to break the heaven origin illusory array. This process was very long and time-consuming, but he had enough patience. 4 hours later, it was noon, and Ji Tianqing finally broke the illusory array and successfully closed it. Swoosh! On the empty mountain peak, a white light suddenly flashed. After the heaven origin illusory array closed, the mountain peak revealed its true appearance. On the barren mountain peak, an old and dilapidated palace and house with a radius of 200 square meters appeared out of thin air. Although the palace and house were very old and dilapidated, most of the walls and roofs had collapsed and become ruins of bricks and stones. But Ji Tianqing could still see that this was once a small temple, and it was the oldest giant miracle temple. It's really here. A smile flashed across his eyes, and he thought to himself, I thought that after 200 to 300 years of wind and rain, this temple would have turned into ruins. I didn't expect that with the protection of the heaven origin illusory array, the temple could be preserved until now, and I can still see its original appearance. He used his spiritual senses to check and found that this temple was no longer protected by the array, but it was filled with dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth. There was an open space in front of the temple, and it was once the place where the believers worshipped incense. In the dilapidated main hall of the temple, the statue of the giant miracle god was enshrined. As for the house behind the temple, the dozens of houses were for the temple's abbot and believers to live in. Ji Tianqing stepped across the open space and entered the main hall of the temple. After looking around for a while, he found some ancient artifacts. He put those broken artifacts into his spatial ring, and he would study them slowly in the future. Then he walked through the main hall of the temple and entered the house behind it. As soon as he stepped into the dusty house, his attention was attracted by a big tree in the corner of the yard. It was a nameless old willow-like tree that was more than 100 feet tall, and it seemed to be at least 300 to 400 years old. But this tree was still green and lush, and thousands of green branches hung down from the top of the tree. The plains and mountains around the giant miracle city were barren places where not even a blade of grass grew. But in this house that had been abandoned for 200 years, there was a big green tree. How could Ji Tianqing not be surprised? In the empty house, there were only 2 things in addition to the dust and the ruins of bricks and stones. One was the statue of the giant miracle god standing in the middle of the yard, which was 30 meters tall and majestic. You're tuning in to the Blee Maze Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.